This video is sponsored by viewers like you. Thanks to all my patrons. Previously on this channel, I did a deep dive into Sonic Underground, a strange, ill-advised cartoon spin-off of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. If you haven't seen that video, I don't blame you, but the idea was to thoroughly explore a part of the franchise that everyone agreed was bad, but no one actually talked about. With any luck, I'd find something worth salvaging. Without spoiling it, I did, but not enough. But Underground was only one of 3 different, quietly agreed to be bad Sonic properties that I wanted to explore. In fact, another example led to my first video on the channel about the Sonic Riders trilogy, and its infamously terrible third game. I'd originally considered just playing Free Riders, but I played through the whole trilogy for context. Strangely, both of these videos have brought us here. I'm digging into another ill-advised cartoon, another famously terrible game out of a very mixed 3, and everything else around them to see what's worth keeping.
Awkward?
Awkward.
Sonic Boom was a confusing, short-lived sub-franchise that premiered in November 2014 to appeal more to Western audiences, much like how Capcom was failing to do at the time. Boom redesigned, rewrote, and recontextualized the primary cast of the games into a silly, part action, part slice-of-life sitcom. It encompassed a TV show as its centerpiece, with video games and a comic to supplement it. It didn't start well. People mocked the bandaged and buffed redesigns mercilessly, and the TV show didn't exactly impress viewers off the bat. But the tie-in games, Rise of Lyric on the Wii U and Shattered Crystal on the 3DS, sold and reviewed so poorly that they seemed to tank the entire enterprise on their own. Only 3 years later, Sonic Boom ended as an active property, bewildering Sonic fans just as much as when it arrived. Except, those fans are still asking for a 3rd season of the show. I wrote this intro after watching the same 8 out of context compilations for the 5th time, and I'm still shocked that 2010's Amy had a personality and that Styx didn't suck. It's not a great show, but it was clearly doing something right. So let's take a few steps back, and we'll give Sonic Boom a fresh reevaluation.
Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
Much has been said about Sonic's clunky life in 3D, let alone how long it took to make a great one. Generations is mediocre, don't at me. His early goes at it were often technically broken, sometimes creatively misguided, a bit saturated with characters who were unsaturated with character, questionable experiments with playstyle, and invariably lacking in time and polish. I recommend watching the Golden Bolts video on the behind-the-scenes mess at Sega in this era. It certainly explains a few things, particularly what the now infamous Yuji Naka got up to before he left Sega. But there was a lot of ambition in this era. Story had never been such a major element in Sonic games, and rarely in action platformer games. That was more the realm of his comics and cartoons. Or just sticking to games, Legend of Zelda or JRPGs. Can you believe Sonic Adventure and Ocarina of Time were released in Japan 1 month apart? That's bug shit to me. But starting with Adventure, Sonic games suddenly had high stakes, reasonably involved plots except Sonic Heroes, and they even succeeded at compelling character arcs, if only twice. And with the guys who die. Wait, is that the secret? Again, clunky, cheesy, badly lacking in polish, but I would never accuse the Adventure era of being artless. Enter you-know-what. All of these problems came to a head in this disastrous soft reboot of the franchise. Despite being developed by a completely different team than the games before it, Sonic 06 managed to condense and amplify all of its predecessor's flaws. The broken programming and design, the excess of characters with crummy playstyles, oh boy, the misguided creative direction, and holy Christ mountain, the sheer lack of time and polish. All of it was at its worst in Sonic 2006. And while you can blame the technical nightmares on its troubled and rushed development, where the game had to make a Christmas launch despite the dev team being hacked to pieces and beheaded, there were also just some boneheaded ideas at the game's core that weren't going to be saved with more development time. Sonic 06 was received so poorly and was made during such a big shift in Sonic Team structure that it became an unintended turning point for the franchise, the kind you don't mean to do when you make a reboot. The next mainline game, Sonic Unleashed, changed almost every element, being produced by Akinori Nishiyama from Dimps, who had recently worked on the Rush games for the DS. The playstyle that stuck around took the Mach Speed sections from 06 and adapted in Rush's boost system, dropping the adventure controls seemingly for good. The story and cast were pulled back to just a handful of characters going on a simple, lighthearted, globe-trotting adventure. I mean, Eggman's still summoning Liquid Satan, but things mellow out pretty quickly after the intro. The only things that didn't change were the English voice cast carried over from Sonic X, but they would be replaced by 2010. And sound director Tomoya Otani had already taken over from Jun Sonoe back in Sonic 06, but that felt like Otani and his crew continuing the Sonoe-era Sonic palette. Unleashed feels far more like the composers stepping into new shoes and branching out musically. A lot of people consider 06 to be the beginning of the modern Sonic era, but for me it feels more like the sad death of the adventure era, and Unleashed is the true beginning of modern Sonic. Ironic that it started development as the third adventure game then. While there's a lot I like and respect about Unleashed, it's a frustrating little game for me. The enjoyment I get out of it has a serious drop-off point only a few hours in, when all of its bad habits become the norm more than anything. I'll talk about it more in detail this November 18th for its 15th anniversary, but I will say it's a game I want to like so much more than I do. It was one of the last few Sonic games for over a decade to have an actual heart and spirit at its core, alongside Black Knight of all things, and Sonic Team seem to have the goal of an actual attempt at polish. It's still one of the best looking games in the franchise, even if its continued use of motion capture and its blobby caricature human designs haven't aged well. Its lighting engine and environmental art direction definitely have. But it's how they pared down the story that I think is most relevant to where Sonic went next. After the bloated mess of 06, the writing philosophy seemed to become, keep it simple, stupid. After Sonic and the Black Knight, lead writer Shiro Maekawa departed from Sega, and he was a big part of why the games from Adventure 2 through Black Knight had more dramatic tones. But starting with the next main 3D game, Sonic Colors, the scripts were handled by veteran TV writers Ken Pontac and Warren Graff. At the time, they were probably best known for working on Happy Tree Friends, and presumably they were brought in to introduce a more humorous, kid-friendly tone to the writing. Unfortunately, the writing philosophy quickly became keep it stupid simple, and thus Sonic was numbingly unfunny for the next decade.
He said his name is Yacker. He's from a race of beings called Wisps.
Lisps?
No, Wisps, with a W.
Yeah, I'll just stick with aliens if that's okay with everybody.
Oh, sure.
Hey, did somebody here order a clobbering? Are you sure? It says somebody ordered an extra large clobbering topped with everything. Okay. Tell you what, I can't take this thing back, so I'll give you an extra large clobbering for nothing. Hope you're hungry. You know, I don't like what you're doing to my friends in there. It's messed up, so I'm gonna mess you up. Yeah, that's right. I'm stretching. You got a problem with that?
I'd rather not be mean to Pontac and Graff specifically. For one, they didn't deserve an ounce of the fandom fuckhead horseshit they got. Two, it's hard to tell what comes from them as writers and what was actually Sega's doing. For example, Shadow was Sega's fault, not his writers. And as I will discuss later, they are perfectly capable of funny and likable material within Sonic. In fact, they presumably wrote Eggman's PA messages in Colors, which are genuinely funny.
Next stop, the asteroid coaster. Zoom along through and sometimes into space debris. Then lose your lunch in zero G. To avoid embarrassing hickeys, please refrain from arm wrestling the octopi. The space sickness you will eventually get is not the responsibility of Eggman's incredible interstellar amusement park or its subsidiaries. Send any complaints to the inventor of space. Thank you.
Thing is, even the good parts of their writing suffer from strange quirks that they carry throughout their tenure with Sonic, and you can even hear it in the PA messages. A refusal to end a joke.
Please beware of the spikes on the asteroid coaster. They are sharp. Really? We have to warn people about spikes. Like they won't notice the spikes. I mean, come on, the cars are nothing but spikes. Unbelievable. What? My what is still on?
Everything needs to be winked at the player like a twitch, and even their best jokes lose their impact when they're dragged on for so long they leave bloodstains on the floor. But like I've said before, if you played Sonic Freeriders, which I'm very certain they did not write, I think Sega was just stripping these characters of all nuance in the first place. Force has later confirmed this for me, since Pontac and Graff were only involved in localization. This was just a company-wide issue with the series writing at the time. We'll come back to that later. The point is, the writing in the 2010s was bland, charmless, bizarrely paced, yet with such contempt for the intelligence of its audience. The adventure era's cheesy, knuckleheaded, and often poorly translated ambition, followed by a sucking void of charm, was what Sonic fans were used to when it came to his 3D adventures. when a new spin-off was announced in October 2013, and everyone got really confused.
Well, look at you!
Our tale begins 13 months before the show airs, October 2nd, 2013, with its first teaser image of Tails, Sonic, Knuckles, and Amy in silhouette, hinting at their redesigns. People are immediately concerned with why Knuckles looks like that. Styx is also not yet present in marketing. No one knows that she exists, let alone as a main character. February 6, 2014, the first proper trailer is uploaded to Sega's YouTube channel, showing what would turn out to be the first 2 minutes of Episode 1, The Sidekick, starring the game's voice cast and animated by the French studio We Do Productions. The animation and voice acting all seem pretty good. Sonic's lips fall out with his dialogue very quickly, but that's not new or unique in French-English collaborations like this. I've seen Miraculous Ladybug, it's not going anywhere. By this point, we finally have confirmation of everyone's redesigns, in part due to the announcement of the tie-in video games. From where I was standing, completely divorced from Sonic at the time, the collective reaction I saw was, why? Why? Amy and Tails look fine, I guess. Wait, Marine is in this? If you look up the artist's notes on the redesigns, it makes more sense, giving them distinct silhouettes that kids can recognize, which they already had, taking influence from athletes and making them look ready for action and unconcerned with if they look cool or not. Thing is, they don't look cool. There's the sense of reinventing the wheel, accidentally breaking the wheel, and haphazardly sports taping it back together. I assume you want to market them to kids so they'll buy toys, but who would want toys that look so clunky? We'll come back to that too. People could tell right away that Knuckles was only going to become the dumb muscle even more, and it's not the most flattering torso, but it's Sonic who will always bother me the most. Why is he wearing such a nasty-ass scarf? Paint the damn thing red or something. Make him pop. You made him almost all blue now, and the mess of runner's tape makes him busy and hard to look at already. Don't make him harder to look at. It's a similar problem to the side characters in Sonic Underground, how over-designed everyone looks, though here it's the main cast, and they're mostly just buried in accessories as opposed to being grotesque facsimiles of life. As we'll see, when it comes to the supporting cast, Boom actually has the inverse problem. I feel bad for Takashi Iizuka. It sounds like the early concepts were even worse. I want to see them so badly. Also, I love that in their quest to give them distinct silhouettes that show their roles and personalities, you can't see any of Tails' new kit, so they just gave him a wrench. And they took away Amy's sundress, a signifier of her personality as the feminine one. There are holes in this idea. With all of that background nonsense out of the way, we jump ahead to November 8, 2014, as Sonic Boom officially begins airing. For any kids who sat down to watch it and weren't following the promotion and marketing, this is their first impression. That sucked. The music is basically just a guitar playing a scale. The character animations don't look great. Why does Amy holding her hammer look so wrong? The colors are vibrant and overstimulating like networks want to give to kids, I guess. But overall, it's a real empty, unimpressive intro. And this is following the legacies of... It most reminds me of the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog intro, which was just wacky nonsense that mashed up the Sonic theme with In the Hall of the Mountain King. Both kind of tell you the budget you're working with. Funny thing is, this is all just cut down from the French version, which is a little bit better. The music's kind of better at least, but this puzzle's still missing a lot of pieces here. And then, once Eggman blows up the logo, this is what the title cards look like. Somehow this is worse. Despite being billed as an action comedy, the show is actually more or less a slice-of-life sitcom with obligatory action scenes thrown in, at least for Season 1. The fights don't feel core to the show, more like there was a quota or clause to meet. They rarely are interesting to look at or play out creatively. Once you've seen that abysmally unimpressive title sequence, you've frankly seen most of the fight scenes. Take a drink every time Amy hits the same crab the same way. For what it's worth, I think the show only needed to be a slice-of-life comedy. Where it shines most often is simply in the friendship of the 5 lead heroes and the comedic casualness they have with Eggman. These 6 characters just hanging out often bring some of the show's best jokes and character humor, and they're acted and, usually, written well enough that I easily buy their friendship. That's one thing Underground totally failed.
Hey, Sonic, bro to bro. What's up with you and Amy?
But if there's anything Underground failed to do that Boom nails, it's making its own likable and charismatic version of Sonic. He's got all the requisite ego and impatience, but he demonstrably cares about his friends and likes being around them. Most importantly, Boom Sonic taps into an aspect of the character that most Sonic media doesn't: the fact that he's a teenager. Most properties don't draw much attention at whatever age he could be. He's mostly a good-natured creature of whim who could be anywhere between 10 and 20. Movie Sonic is more of an inexperienced kid, and Frontiers is the first game where he and the cast really feel like they've grown up a few good years. Boom Sonic is a teenager. He groans and snarks, he gets fed up with people's nonsense, he's nowhere as cool as he thinks he is. Sonic is at his best when his mental state seems to be, do I have to? Roger Craig Smith was a divisive voice actor for Sonic for a long time, but it's clear to me the problem was always the material he was given. Free writers, colors, Lost World, just not good scripts, and they didn't suit his vocal range. Sonic Boom? Roger in his element. His slightly older sounding voice for Sonic works perfectly with the tired, annoyed teenager aspect of the character here, and it proved years before Frontiers that he really could act as Sonic.
That is some interesting cocoa.
Want to guess my secret ingredient?
If he says love, I'm out of here.
Try as he might, he's not the best character though. I don't know if I could pick just one best. He has such endearing co-leads around him. I know who my favorite is, because he's my favorite in the franchise, period. He's my son, but this show is one of the best utilizations and performances for Tails ever, at least since the Deep cartoons. He's much how he was in the games by this point, the genius kid sidekick, basically furry Jimmy Neutron, but with the added benefit of letting him be cute as hell all the time. He's sweet, he's hilarious, he can wreck shop as well as anyone else, and any episode focusing on him has a good chance of being one of the show's best. He does tend to be a bit of a butt monkey more than anyone else, which is not a good choice, but it's not his purpose. It's not like the show always utilizes its characters in their best ways to begin with. 2014 was the year that Colleen O'Shaughnessy took over as his voice, and she's still my favorite of his VAs. I liked Kate Higgins in the role. She perhaps leaned a little more boyish in her timbre, and she was certainly his best game voice up to that point. But Colleen brings so much zest, cheer, and pitch-perfect delivery.
Is it nutmeg?
Close! It's actually a tablespoon of garlic powder.
That explains the texture.
Combined with almost everything he does being adorable, she helps make Tails a real joy to watch. Boom is a great show for Tails fans alone.
Say hello to a little device I call the MX4180 Electroplasmatic Capsulator.
But again, I'm loath to say it, it's a stiff competition for best lead character when you also have Amy and Styx. Amy Rose was not often treated very well in any incarnation before this, at most just being Sonic's love-struck fan, a violent stalker at worst, and a nothing presence at best. The one time she got some character development, it was gone in the next game and was completely reversed in the one after. And don't get me started on Archie Amy. Whew. Sonic Boom rehabilitated her character by essentially starting over from scratch. Instead of beginning and living as Sonic's fan, she's simply one of his best friends. She's implied to have feelings for him, but their comfortable friendship takes center stage more than anything. One where she won't put up with his crap. And frankly, it makes them way more viable a ship as a result.
Being a role model is overrated. I'd much rather be hilariously edgy.
Sonic, when you say things like that, I feel like throwing up in my mouth.
Cindy Robinson was another contentious casting when she was hired, due to having a much older sounding voice that clashed with the performance.
If you want to see that cast, you'd better keep winning. You got that?
It didn't help that she had to follow up Lisa Ortiz, one of the few slam dunk castings from Sonic X, and still my favorite Amy voice, and Jennifer Douillard, who had really nailed Amy's voice by the time of Heroes. Sonic Boom seems to age up the characters a bit, if not demonstrably, then at least in spirit, and here Cindy works perfectly. Boom Amy's true strength as a character is the facade of maturity. She's trying desperately to be the adult in a group of teenage idiots. She presents herself as wise and responsible, while proudly embracing her femininity with the occasional nod to conscious feminism, and still having plenty of youthful whimsy and a barely contained temper. But in truth, Amy is exactly as much of a chaotic goofball as her friends. She will get dragged into the nonsense of the week, and she'll be just as much fun and make just as much of a mess as they will. She and Tails are both characters who could easily be buzzkills, and I won't say there aren't episodes where the writing gets exactly that insufferable, but they're nowhere the majority.
Meteors are shooting stars. We shouldn't be running. We should be making wishes. I wish for a pony.
And I wish you'd take cover.
How come your wish came true?
And you can't forget this show's one major original character, Styx the Badger. A feral jungle dweller who only really entered civilization when she befriended Team Sonic, Styx is the wild card of the cast, emphasis on wild. She rummages through garbage, screeches and screams, fights with a boomerang and later a staff, and can frankly only be handled by Team Sonic. She's also extremely paranoid about government agents, aliens, technology, people reading her mind, inanimate objects being alive, and she's always spewing some kind of wacky conspiracy theory. Does she sound like she'd be absolutely dreadful? Boy, does she! She's the funniest character on the show. Go figure. After the 2010s drove home how harmful conspiracy whack jobs actually were in the world, they became a lot less funny to watch, didn't they? Assuming they ever were. I don't think I ever liked them, but Styx works because her paranoid conspiracy shit never feels targeted at specific coded groups. It's always something nebulous like the government and aliens, and not aliens in the sense of immigration, thank fuck. If she went on a rant saying, for example, that all hedgehogs are untrustworthy or that we need to stockpile guns, then yeah, gross. And they do toe the line with some of her jokes, like the time she freaks out about taxes being used to help people, but the writers were smart enough to never lean too close to reality. She's just a mentally ill character who's allowed to be mentally ill. And hilarious. And a blast to be around. Nika Futterman is the perfect voice for her too, being just screechy enough to sell the wildness, and giving her an interesting, almost New England accent to make her stand out even more. And be just hard enough to understand that you can believe that she hasn't talked to a lot of people. Basically, Styx takes a lot of character traits that should not work and makes them into one of the best characters on the show. Styx rules, and I'm so glad people liked her enough that she made it into the franchise proper. Here's hoping she stays just as endearing and just as nuts.
Nice to meet you. She seems nice.
But those are only the heroes. The show has a sizable rogues gallery of villains who I'm not going to talk about here because they mostly suck. But the ones who are unequivocally great are the big guy himself, Dr. Eggman, and his hapless robot lackeys, Orbot and Cubot. Eggman had been a dynamic, theatrical presence in the franchise most every time he's had a voice, and the games were really playing that up by the time of this show. Boom Eggman manages to be both the lower stakes, family sitcom version of that, and the logical conclusion all at once. The point of his character is basically to make sure that Mike Pollock is having as much fun as possible all the time. Eggman is hilarious, and he gets to do so much that he usually doesn't, mostly by nature of him and Team Sonic being a lot more casual and even sometimes friendlier with each other than any other incarnation, and because he's as much of a villager as they are. What he lacks in any real diabolical danger, he makes up for in delivery. I don't know that Mike reads any of his lines poorly.
Can we talk about this after I rescue you?
Rescue me? Oh, no. I'm not getting rescued by my arch nemesis. My friends will never let me hear the end of it.
What friends?
I got friends. I don't need to prove anything to you.
This is also probably the best use of Orbot and Cubot in the whole franchise. While they were added to the cast as ostensibly comic relief, they've never actually been funny, just teeth-grindingly tedious. Again, more the fault of some dreadful scripts than their own. Boom gives them the chance to really be the likable, bumbling lackeys they're supposed to be. Orbot is the dignified, sensible one, and Cubot is the goofy dumbass. But really, they're the same. Hapless idiots stuck taking orders and abuse from a failure of a conqueror. Cubot does often fall victim to the show's lazy jokes about stupidity. There's a running gag where Orbot says something in a barely complicated way, then Cubot repeats it in layman's terms.
This new intern worries my circuits. I fear that his enthusiasm for the most menial tasks causes us to appear inferior by comparison.
Yeah, and he's making us look bad, too!
I don't think it lands once, but the episodes centered around them just as characters tend to be funny and charming and play off their dynamic well. I'd argue they're some of the best performances from both Kirk Thornton and Wally Wingert, who are not always used the best in this franchise. Kirk is a much better Orbot than he is a Shadow. and like 50 other characters. There's another comparison to Underground. Too few people voice too many characters. If there's only one truly weak link in the core cast, it's easily Knuckles. Travis Willingham is putting everything into his role, and that goes a long way. But like everyone expected when that teaser dropped, Knuckles is just the meathead dumbass of the group, essentially scrubbed of anything distinctive and noble, and just made a high school football illiterate.
Oh, wait, I can't read.
There is a way to use this kind of character well, especially when they play up the more Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy style, pure of heart, dumb of ass side of him. Usually they don't. Remember this signature exchange from early in Rise of Lyric?
There's no time like the present.
Wait, there are presents?
No.
Remember every YouTube review playing that scene as indicative of the game's bad writing? That's Knuckles in the show, too. It's about as funny here. It's basically just Cubot's lazy running gag, but a main character. His punchlines tend to sound like the first thing the writer thought of, and it really only works if the show doesn't linger on it. We'll dive pretty deep into his worst moments, but I'll also give him some credit. When his jokes hit, they can hit pretty damn hard. Put a big pin in both of these. And put a pin on the rest of the villagers. I don't want to talk about them yet, except to say that they're easily the worst part of the show, and by a significant margin. By this point, you should have noticed a fair bit about the art style and animation of the show. If you're my age, your first thought might be, this looks like Donkey Kong Country. And yeah, it's got similarities. The basic setting of the characters living on an island, living in gazebos, fighting ineffectual dipshit villains. Both shows were collaborations with French animation studios, which might explain the loose lip syncing, not that that's alien to Sonic. DK Country was of course made in the 90s on much more archaic technology, and Sonic Boom does benefit from its 2 extra decades of advancements, but it still can't escape a similar feeling of cheapness. The animators only had so much money to spend on a 52-episode season, and only a handful of episodes feel like they were able to put enough of it into the character animation. More often than not, everyone kind of stiffly lumbers around and floats between poses without any of that good snap, squash, stretch, and follow-through that you see in great animation. Go figure, some of the best episodes of this season have much snappier and bouncier animation, and it's so much more pleasing to the eye and suits the humor much better. On that note, for the purposes of this video, I've avoided watching Sonic Prime to keep my thoughts focused and fair, but I did catch an early scene with Rouge, and God, imagine if Sonic Boom was animated that good. Look, I know I'm kind of rambling and bouncing between subjects, but that's the thing. The central flaw with this show, and Sonic Boom on the whole really, is how slapdash and undercooked everything is. Boom is meant to be its own thing. The characters have distinct personalities from the games, there are new recurring cast members, it's set in its own tropical island world, but never does the show just introduce itself. The first episode is a good point to set up a status quo. Who are these people? What is this world? What is happening? Episode 1, The Sidekick, does that a little bit. We learn that Sonic and Eggman fight, and Tails is Sonic's pilot sidekick, just like the mainline games. But we only briefly see Amy and Knuckles, who are otherwise main characters in the show with very different portrayals from those games, while Styx, the brand new character who is also a main cast member, is nowhere to be seen. But we do spend the episode with this beaver who actively steals laughter from the world, so no, not a very good introduction. The status quo we get is team fights Eggman, shtick happens, we're gonna hope is funny, and that's as far as it tends to go. The impression given is that there's just nothing here to introduce. It feels like Sega's plans for the franchise started and ended at make it Jak and Daxter, and the writers and animators were left to figure out what to do with the property in real time. Turns out there are reasons for that. Co-showrunner Bill Freiberger has shed some light on this oddly lacking first episode. 1, that intro that was uploaded as the show's teaser was in fact the pilot. That was what the production team sent in to get approval to make the rest of the show. A 2-minute proof of concept with only half of the main cast. 2, Styx was planned to be in the episode, but there was too much else to do to work her in, so they just scrapped her involvement. They kept in one of the show's worst side characters, but not its consistently funniest main character. That's fascinating to me. I know bugger all about the process of making an animated TV show. You won't need to work hard to make me admit that. But those 2 notes alone feel so revealing. That says something about the priorities of the executives making demands and the creators having to work with them. It almost explains the undercooked nature of the whole franchise on its own. Even the proof of concept that got it approved was a fraction of a half-finished idea. But if you really want to understand why Sonic Boom is the way it is, you gotta go back to long before that first announcement. You need to go back to the prototype trailer for a little game called Sonic Synergy. This game was being developed by a team called Big Red Button, headed by former Naughty Dog member Bob Raffi. Naughty Dog, huh? You don't say. They were approached by Sonic Team to develop a game in a different, more adventure game style to appeal more to a Western audience, and that Naughty Dog Jak and Daxter-ish influence was likely intentional and just greatly carried over, and now some of you are panic screaming in your head, oh god, it's Rise of Lyric! This is Rise of Lyric! And you are correct. Rise of Lyric began its development as Sonic Synergy. But as far as we know, Synergy started long before Sonic Boom was ever going to be a big franchise with a TV show and tie-ins. This was just going to be an experimental spin-off game. There were no ambitions that we know of to make it a money-making flagship of its own. My hypothesis is that Sega got overexcited at the possibilities of Synergy and comically jumped the gun. They overestimated the potential appeal of the whole endeavor and put all their eggs in one heavily bandaged basket and decided this potentially interesting action-adventure game should be just a tie-in prequel to an entire 3D cartoon franchise. Of course, corporations function without foresight or hindsight, so they made it happen, and when it didn't work out remotely as well as they wanted it to, because it was a half-baked proposition from the get-go, they dropped it like it was oiled. Hell, Takashi Iizuka moved back to California to be more involved with Sonic's development so that something like Boom would never happen again. And I think that's why we got Sonic Boom as we did, a cash maker where there was none, and the ever-suffering production staff and game developers had to figure it all out from there. Here's the thing, I wasn't alive for the first generations of Transformers or My Little Pony, and I wasn't old enough to watch or remember all those shows produced by Deke when they first aired, including Sonic's. I was around for Sonic X, but 4Kids anime dubs from the 2000s is a whole different conversation unto itself. Support the Patreon and maybe one day. So Sonic Boom is my first real experience with a licensed show. Like how there used to be a ton of licensed video games for TV shows and movies of a quality hovering loosely around dubious, Sonic Boom is a licensed TV show for a video game. It's the Sonic property handed to a group of studios by Sega who are then told, make something for us to sell. It's visibly cheap, it's released to meet a corporate quota rather than as a work of passion from a group of creators, and however much passion they tried to put into it regardless, there's only so much they can do with the time and budget restrictions they were given, and thus the quality hovers loosely around dubious. That's a lot of criticism to level at a show and for me to never tell you if I actually liked it or not. So all of that taken in, how do I actually feel about Sonic Boom? It's actually pretty fun. Yeah, this is a weird one. The thing about aiming for the middle of the road is the wind can blow you to either end. There's plenty in this season that left me with a real sour taste in my mouth. But in the long run, that's actually not my main takeaway. What is that there's a lot of charm and funny writing. As long as it felt like the writers were having fun too. It doesn't always. The best way to explain what I mean is to do what I did for my Sonic Underground video, but just for this season. Let's look at my 5 least favorite episodes, the 5 most disappointing, and then my top 5 favorites. Those alone say pretty much everything about the season on the whole. First, 2 dishonorable mentions with deceptively similar names, Late Fees and Late Night Wars. The latter is one of Boom's more iconic episodes, if only for how utterly surreal its opening is, with Knuckles putting a trash can on his head and becoming famous. And probably only for that opening, because the rest is just nothing. The eternal issue with adults writing for kids is that you don't always know how to speak to your audience and connect with their interests, and sometimes you have to fall back on your own generation's cultural references just to get the damn script finished. Comedy Chimp and his sidekick are obvious pastiches of Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon respectively, at least in this scenario. Both of these men had been dead for years. I could almost see this working if it was more a parody of Conan or Letterman, who did have younger audiences staying up to watch with their parents. I remember that happening in my house sometimes. But Carson is the stock late night reference, so that's what they went with. Get used to hearing the word stock as I talk about this show. It's something that really reminds me of Sonic Underground, how more than a few times I got the sense that the writers wished they were working on a different show. Some of its blandest moments feel like they could have been thrown into any other kid's sitcom and would have been the exact same level of mediocre and wholly uninteresting to its target audience. Late night TV episode, yet another TV court episode, homeowners association bullshit. What kid watching this has ever had to worry about a homeowner Homeowners Association. And oh my fucking god, the pathetically on-the-nose Justin Bieber boy band satire, consider that a dishonorable mention too. You could not have projected yourself more as a bitter old fuck. What kid do you think you're appealing to here? This was out of date when it aired. Late Night Wars at least starts with an incredible spark of absurd genius, but then that spark goes on to illuminate how uncommitted Sonic Boom's writing can really be. Late Fees doesn't have that spark. It's simultaneously one of the show's most frustrating, yet most nothing episodes. Sonic has a library book he needs to return that day to avoid late fees. A bunch of stupid shit happens on the way, and he goes out of his way to be interrupted by it. When your character is defined by a grumpy teenage impatience and can literally run the speed of sound, you have to do a lot of work to suspend your disbelief just to buy an episode like this. By the 2-minute mark, it's no longer suspended and my brain's just screaming, "Go around!" There aren't many episodes I came away from wishing I hadn't sat through them, but this was notably the first. It was also one of 4 episodes that came pre-scratched on my Blu-ray, so I had to rip them from YouTube instead. Thanks for the warning, Best Buy. I guess. We begin the list proper with number 48, Role Models. One of the show's worst habits, which informed most of the episodes on this list, is looking like it wants to say something about the nature of heroism and the fickleness of public persona, but not actually saying anything and just being annoying for 11 minutes. In the case of role models, it's the idea that public figures need to behave themselves and be upstanding role models for kids. What the episode actually is this. A grotesque approximation of a platypus hires himself as the team's behavioral coach and forces them to be prim, proper, and polite for every little thing they do. They're a ragtag bunch of tween-age dipshits, so they can't, and thus you hear a lot of this. Finally, the heroes become just as annoyed as I am and rebel, but about 10 minutes too late to make this in any way watchable. I went into this project intent on sitting all the way through every episode, no matter how bad it got. Then this walking anus blew his whistle for the 20th time, and I reneged on that shit. I skipped ahead to the good part when he gets launched into hell, and I don't feel bad about it. If you told me that by doing that, I missed the best joke in the show's run, I would neither believe you nor care. Number 49, Guilt Tripping. Sonic and Tails save a village of critters called Gogobas from bandits. The Gogobas proceed to passive-aggressively guilt-trip them into staying and protecting them forever, and it's aggressively unfunny. They lay that self-pitying smarm on thick, and it reveals how skilled a writer you have to be to make that funny in and of itself. But it's all this episode has, and it is not clever with it, except for one single line.
I'll do it myself. It probably won't cause my chronic back pain to flare up too much. Oh! Ooh!
Oh, don't worry about her. She'll pass out from the pain soon.
Also, the Gogoba Elder keeps making cameos in later episodes, including late fees, and every time I flinch and ask, "Who wanted you back?" There's a classic sketch by the Kids in the Hall where Dave Foley plays a guy with a speech impediment that makes everything he says sound sarcastic.
I'm sorry if I bothered you.
Oh, no, you're not bothering me, Derek. Far from it. There's nothing I would rather do than just stand here and chat with you. You know, really get to know you.
Look, I don't think there's any need to be sarcastic.
Oh, I'm not being sarcastic. No. This is just a little speech impediment. I can't help it.
I feel like this episode is missing that self-awareness, or at least its self-awareness does not go nearly far enough to make this funny instead of grating. I watched the first season with my friend Jacob, and he also pointed out that there is a way to make this idea work as it's played here. Make it so the Gogobas are doing this on purpose. Their guilt tripping is intended to keep Sonic and Tails there so the village can profit maliciously, or they're in league with Eggman, and it gives him time to attack the village, or some similar scenario. And I know this idea works because the show did it already in the very second episode. Eggman stays over at Sonic and Tails' place under the pretense of losing his base, preying on their heroic kindness, and he keeps them awake for days by being annoying. It's revealed near the end that it was all a ruse, and he was intentionally tiring them out so they won't be a threat to him when he attacks. Guilt tripping is missing that clear intention. It instead feels like another commentary on heroism, and what it has to say is not great. This is the kind of episode you don't want so early in your run, let alone the 9th episode out of 52, because I come away desperately hoping that this is not a recurring thing. Shout out to episode 4, Buster, for much the same reason in a very different context.
This was bad.
Yeah.
Another case where it's like, it wouldn't be so bad if the platypus was just a bad guy who had an evil plan. But he's just an asshole.
Yeah, so many of these episodes that feel like commentary on heroism. There's something so cynical, and as soon as they start, you just know the next 11 minutes are going to be the most tedious inevitability bullshit.
It was really sad how, like, the walrus showed up, and we just knew it was going to be one of those days.
She's a harbinger of doom.
She's the horse walrus of the apocalypse. Like, they're not even good at presenting, like, morals, like fucking G.I. Joe or whatever. I don't even think they're trying that hard. They're just trying to say shit in the most, like, boring way.
Number 50, Just a Guy. This is the same episode as Role Models. But instead of annoying, it's frustrating and mean-spirited. Some twit named Mike wants to help Team Sonic fight Eggman, but Sonic tells him he can't go with them because, quote, "You're just a guy." The entire town gasps at this curt but utterly factual statement, and Sonic then spends the rest of the episode having to make up for his insensitivity and not wanting to get one of these ungrateful jackasses killed. I had to think really hard about whether this episode should be in the top 2. It is miserable to sit through, and you come away from it with nothing except the feeling that the writer was just venting.
How could you take that fella to a battle? He's not like you, Sonic. He's just a guy.
Wait, seriously? I only took him to the battle because you people...
You people?
All right.
I hate this
Our
shit.
enthusiasm yesterday was a sensitivity training camping trip!
I feel like you get the point of this,
Saving the village,
but Sonic is clearly not at fault here.
Yeah.
I quit heroing, and I quit this stupid group!
Any Wump writer will tell you the reason to put a character through misery is to put a foil under them, highlight what it is that draws us to them, and see what they're really like in the dark, uncover some significant truth about them underneath the surface. The significant truth that Just a Guy reveals about Sonic is that he is better off leaving these people to die. Now, if you're Spider-Man and J. Jonah Jameson is dragging your name through the dirt your whole life, that's a fair test of character that shows where your morals lie. But Sonic Boom isn't clever enough for that. This isn't the show's extensive and yet puddle-shallow rogues gallery doing a plot. It's the team's neighbors being awful people. These 3 episodes just seem to say that helping people is only a thankless hassle and you shouldn't bother, which is completely antithetical to Sonic. This episode draws the most attention to the show's Achilles heel, the town itself. Team Sonic have basically dedicated their lives to protecting this one village, so the townsfolk are important and recurring supporting cast that the heroes are constantly interacting with and putting themselves on the line for. And I don't like or care about any of them. To be clear, there's a difference between instigators of conflict, which you need for a story and for comedy, and charmless millstones around the neck of the show. They're not really characters either. At best, they're just bits. Every town person has a bit, if they're even meant to be funny. Old Monkey is just an old person. This goat lady talks like a goat at the end of her sentences. Everyone in the Lightning Bolt Society is a useless criminal. Lady Walrus is a wealthy Karen. Fastidious Beaver is, actually, as a character and could die on screen and no one would cry. Comedy Chimp shows up so often, most likely because he's voiced by show co-runner Bill Freiberger, despite the character being the death of comedy. They're all ugly as fuck to look at, especially CC, who looks like Uncanny Valley Bonzi Buddy, and none of them really make me laugh, except for maybe the wolf grandma who's always making trouble. She's funny sometimes. But any episode where the townsfolk are major presences is invariably a drag. They are to Sonic Boom what the songs were to Sonic Underground. Something that never improves an episode, only makes it worse. But someone somewhere thought they had to always be there. When we were watching these episodes, Jacob made an interesting comparison with a different kids show and how it approached its neighborhood.
Here's a comparison. Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold was a show with an incredible sense of community. It felt like you were in the fucking neighborhood hanging out with all these like kids and adults, and like you knew your fucking butcher. Like, the butcher was a character. How cool would it be if there was just, like, a restaurant guy that is like, hey, Sonic and everybody, what adventures are you getting up to today? Oh, well, I got some friendly advice here because I'm a fun guy. Or, like, Amy goes to the florist or some shit. And they all have, like, other friends. I'm sure that at that point there's some kind of Sega limitations to how creative you can be there. But I feel like a greater sense of community would be better. Because, I mean, there's the mayor, but he's barely fucking anything. There's
It really
Dave.
is just Dave.
It's just Dave.
I also threw out the idea of how entertaining it would be if Team Sonic were protecting an entire village of secret villains. How much more interesting that would make the supporting cast, and how them being awful people would then work with the setup. So it's fitting that there is only one of these characters who I do like, because it's only when he is taken away from his place in the town and made into a villain that he gets to be great. When he's stuck with the one-note dipshits around him, even the Lightning Bolt Society where they're supposed to be villains, he's completely wasted in their presence. I'm gonna have a lot to say about that blue dweeby loser down the line, because he is a hell of a dark horse. And no, I'm not talking about fucking Charlie. Number 51, the 51st episode, in fact, counterproductive. I'm paraphrasing Quentin Reviews here because it absolutely applies. It sometimes feels like the creators watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and didn't get the point. Knuckles realizes that he has been unhelpful and counterproductive, so he dedicates himself to making it up to this guy, Charlie, whom Knuckles had recently gotten fired from his job by being a fuckstick. He then proceeds to obliviously ruin the rest of Charlie's life, destroying his work, getting him fired from a second job he liked, having his wife throw him out of the house, and eventually making him snap and turn into a villain with a superpowered suit. And it is so painful and mean-spirited. I don't know what psychopath kid this was for. Knuckles and Team Sonic are supposed to be unambiguous heroes within the text of this show. First name, last name, occupation, hero man, hero man, hero man. And they all come out of this looking bad, right up to being utterly dismissive of everything Knuckles does by the end, and saying out loud, well, Charlie's a villain now, so Knuckles is off the hook. It's kind of like what happened to the priest in It's Always Sunny, and it sure doesn't translate, does it? The Patty's Pub Gang are supposed to be terrible people. You're supposed to be good. Wait a damn minute, Charlie?
Oh, milksteak.
Knuckles' stupidity is already a coin flip on if it's actually funny or grating. A few too many episodes bank on him carrying the whole thing, and he just can't because his one joke is so belabored. It gets old so fast. So when it's used to relentlessly harm someone for no clear reason beyond misanthropic shits and giggles, it becomes unwatchable. Hey, speaking of Hey Arnold, that's another lesson you could have learned from them. This shit's not fun to watch. The only thing keeping this from being the absolute worst episode is the ending, when Charlie's wife sees him finally standing up for himself, proudly cheers him on, and in the resolution is actually totally on board with joining him for a life of crime. It's funny and cute, and the episode's only saving grace.
All right, Charlie! Rush him!
And that's a silver lining I can give to this season on the whole. Even its worst episode has something good in it. And damn, does the very worst episode have so little good in it. Number 52, the worst of Season 1, Fire in a Crowded Workshop. Just a Guy feels like a bad attempt at commentary and takes the village down with it. Counterproductive feels like a bad attempt at an It's Always Sunny Seinfeld kind of plot and takes Knuckles down with it. This episode feels like actively targeted resentment towards these characters. Tails comes home to his workshop to find that Sonic, Amy, and Knuckles have burned out the inside while trying to help a new character, Percy the Bandicoot. We then get a classic Rashomon situation, with each character telling their side of the story and exaggerating how they see and feel about the other three. Finally, Percy says what really happened and actually expresses her own real personality, and she doesn't have one. She's just kind of smug, just kind of brings out the worst in everyone around her, and she flirts with a child at the end. But in the long run, she leaves no impact except for looking like an actual Sonic character for once. Funny story behind that. Early in Rise of Lyric's development, Percy was planned to be a playable character. There's even a bug where Amy will sometimes compliment Percy when she's supposed to be talking to Knuckles. But that plan fell by the wayside. She ended up just a side quest in the game, and a classic sexy lamp in the show, fought over by the boys like dogs on bacon, and the target of Amy's bitter jealousy for the crime of being another girl existing. That same ambivalence, intentional or not, is what poisons this entire episode. I come out of it with this skin-crawling feeling that the writer does not like these characters. Each one tells their side of the story with total antipathy to the others, making their friends out to be an obnoxious burden that brings everything down. I know from this writer's other episodes that this isn't a consistent thing, so it could easily just be another bad translation of a simple idea. Route Suzak wrote at least one episode in Season 2 I liked a lot, but considering she was the director of the entire show, it does not reflect well. You know, one of the first things that started endearing me to this show? How much the main quintet are so obviously friends. Most Sonic games don't concern themselves with depicting the main crew as much more than an Eggman fighting squad that Sonic sometimes brings along with him, or in Amy's worst cases, an unwanted hanger-on that he's never happy to see. It really wasn't until Sonic Frontiers where everyone's friendship was so thoroughly explored and made so explicit. Before then, if you wanted to see them being friends, you had to look at ancillary material and spin-offs like the comics or Sonic Boom. The show frequently begins with the cast hanging out on the beach, eating at Medburger, doing stuff together that groups of friends do. It's not in your face, but it's one of the things that makes the show such a comfortable watch when it's good. When that gets thrown away in favor of playing up interpersonal bullshit or tiresome toxic masculinity that does not suit these characters, Boom becomes a chore to watch. So this episode, where the team is written to think so little of each other, is not only blisteringly unfunny, it's gross.
No, we're watching the whole
under the spell of a
bullshit
wicked
here. We're watching everything.
I selflessly administered medical care to the foul temptress. Oh, you poor sweet thing. Allow me to tend to your wounds.
I crave the Go-Go Chief.
I know where to get it fixed.
The one good thing about this episode? Who else? Styx. In every character's retelling of the story, Styx shows up paranoid about Percy and then runs away screaming. In every situation, these characters all saw Styx in the exact same way, and it is so not mean-spirited that it just gets funnier every time it happens.
She seems nice.
I just wish I could hate this episode 100%.
Allow me.
Yeah.
You sit
I
back and
can't.
relax while Sonic
No,
saves the day.
Okay, I'll just
The
watch
light
this
only makes the shadows darker,
the
okay?
honor-
It's amazing that a conspiracy whack job, a kind of person who can be so uncomfortable, is consistently so funny and likable. But she sure as hell could not save this piece of shit. There is otherwise nothing to enjoy here unless you just actively hate this cast. And I guess this one line read from Roger.
Come on, guys! Wait for me!
Sorry, Percy, you deserve better than this. P.S. No, she doesn't evolve beyond a sexy lamp in Season 2. She just drags her copy-pasted model twin sister Stacy into that role with her. Next, the 5 most disappointing episodes. Episodes that should have been good, but in some way dropped the ball. Unlike the other 2 lists, these will be presented in chronological order, but luckily the most disappointing episode aired the latest, so it ended up in 5th place anyway. Dishonorable mention to No Robots Allowed, that Homeowners Association episode, because it starts out looking like a really charming anthology-type episode of everyone trying to make it through a heat wave. And then it stops being that. Also dishonorable mention to Translate This and It Wasn't Me, It Was the One-Armed Hedgehog, for reasons that are shared with episodes on the list, but those ones are more emblematic of the issues, so we'll discuss them as they come up. First, what else but the very beginning of the show, the sidekick. There's good animation here, there's good voice acting, there's even 1 or 2 funny bits. But the further on I watched from the actual pilot, just those first 2 minutes, the less enthused I got to keep watching Sonic Boom. The sidekick is not a good introduction to the show, not just because of its inability to succinctly present a status quo or give its world a good first impression, but because it doesn't even do that for half of the primary cast. We are introduced to Fastidious Beaver, who's what you get when you take a droopy dog impression and eat shit. The only impression the sidekick leaves is that there's not going to be a lot of meat on these bones. The show does find its footing over time, but it's a steep uphill climb from here.
Oh, when the saints go marching in!
Second, Eggheads. Eggman makes evil cookies that, when eaten, give Team Sonic his evil personality. Sonic himself manages to not fall victim to this, and in fact turns Eggman into him to stop them.
Let's crack these eggheads!
It's a memorably silly episode, but the disappointment comes from an issue that's not unique to it, but it is emblematic of the show's runtime. Every episode is 11 minutes long, a standard Saturday morning cartoon type length, but this is absolutely a plot that could have used a full 22-minute block. The evil versions of the team don't do much of anything, mostly just standing around and talking or sitting silently while Eggman talks, and Egg Sonic is over and done with before you really get to enjoy Mike Pollock doing a hilarious Sonic impression. Thankfully, the later episode, The Meteor, does a lot more with that very idea. Translate This is another early episode with this same problem, just speedrunning too many plot points through 11 minutes, so the whole thing feels like a slapdash jumble, and it ends up wasting another fun idea. For that matter, way too many episodes feel like they could have been good, but they specifically start falling apart in the final third. Maybe because that's when the fight scene usually happens. Take a shot. It's a similar issue to Sonic Underground, though in that show's case, it was the half-baked ideas combined with having to fit a minute-long song into every episode. Here, it just feels like the honest struggle to figure out what to do with Boom's undercooked concept. Much of the first half of the season feels too short to flesh out its ideas, and it's not until the middle stretch of episodes that the show starts to nail its pacing, even if the individual episodes aren't always good. I'll give late fees this: it did not need to be longer than 11 minutes.
It'll just be another minute.
Third, Shay Amy. Amy has enough of the terrible food and service of Medburger and decides to start her own restaurant. Dave, the sole visible employee of Medburger, fights back against her. And this combined with Amy going control freak, Eggman sticking his nose into the conflict, and Dave eventually being hired at Shay Amy, the whole thing falls apart. Literally. To explain why this is so disappointing, we need to quickly look at two other episodes, one of which could have also made it to this list. First, Episode 7, Double Doomsday. Up until this point, Dave is exclusively the dweeby, apathetic teenage clerk at Medburger, until here when he admits to being a big fan of Eggman's schemes and gets hired on as an intern to learn the ways of supervillainy. He does remarkably well, disassembling Cubot in secret, usurping Eggman, and nearly destroying the world with their dueling doomsday machines, until Sonic and Tails are able to stop them both. In one fell swoop, this episode takes one of the many one-note nobodies of the island and turns him into an interesting, fresh take on a villain, a nerdy service worker with aspirations of evil. And what could be a really annoying voice is done impressively well by Roger Craig Smith. Yes, he voices Sonic and Dave. He's got surprising range. Dave doesn't reach his full potential in Double Doomsday alone, but it presents intriguing possibilities for his character. Then we get to episode 16, How to Succeed at Evil Without Really Trying. Tails tries to help Styx harvest some fruit for a pie competition, but accidentally destroys the orchard instead. A mysterious organization called the Lightning Bolt Society notice the destruction and invite him to join. They turn out to be an entire group of villains. Except they're more kids outside a dumpster, ignore don't walk on the grass signs kind of bad guys, complete losers. It's a fun episode. Anytime the show focuses on Tails, it's always a delight since he's such an adorable little sweetheart. And Sonic and Amy have a cute scene together too.
Pizzazz!
Pizza!
But the problem is the Lightning Bolt Society themselves. Not that they're losers per se, but that Dave is a founding member. And anytime he's with the Lightning Bolt Society, he doesn't do shit. He barely even talks. Mostly it's everyone else in the group, and the leader seems to be this tusky jagoff. What is it with this show and shitty walruses? All the potential of Dave's character is completely lost whenever he's with this group, and it is such a sad waste. If just a broad series of appearances qualified for this list, that would do it. But I specifically picked Shay Amy because at this point, we're halfway through the season, episode 27. The very previous episode had the Lightning Bolt Society, with Dave again barely being utilized. This episode, Dave is the antagonist with no bolts in sight. And he's still being wasted. Dave being a villain made him interesting by taking him out of his place as a one-note village nobody and making him something special. Everything he does here comes entirely from his job at Medburger, and much like the place does with the joy in his life, it just saps away everything interesting all over again. Medburger on its own is a low-hanging fruit kind of joke that at least gets a chuckle the first time you hear it, but it's so prevalent from every point after that you'd think the writers were going somewhere with it. Much like when they seem to be doing commentary on heroism, it seems like a commentary on cheap fast food joints with apathetic staff, but nothing is really being said. There is probably something to say about big chain restaurants snuffing out smaller establishments, and maybe that could work if Dave wasn't used so much better in a completely different context. Not a bad episode, Amy's a lot of fun, and the 2D art is cute as hell, but I can't wait for Dave to get away from that counter again for real. Fourth, Cabin Fever. It's hard to explain why this is on the disappointing list. The best I can offer is that, depending on which half of it you watch, you would expect it on the best or worst list instead. Team Sonic crowd into Amy's house as a thunderstorm hits, and it's just minutes of everyone annoying her and making a mess, like in Sat AM's worst episode. Then they find a script for a play that she wrote, wherein the characters are all obvious caricatures of them. They get mad at how Amy portrays them and argue with each other, and in a moment I can only describe as abrupt, everyone decides their friendship is over and divides up the house into their own spots, and I get this cold chill down my back that I'm watching another fucking fire in a crowded workshop. But then, something happens. It suddenly becomes a completely different episode. With the house divided, everyone starts acting like pompous land barons, making petty trades for access to the TV or HVAC, playing up their theatricality, and actually bouncing off each other like friends doing make-believe. We even get more evidence that this show is Roger Craig Smith in his element.
We need blankets. In exchange, I'll let you watch TV. Television. Who needs it? Don't ever say that again.
Come on, Knuckles. It's cold.
It stops feeling like gross apathy towards the cast and more like the characters are all in on it and having fun with each other. In the end, they even make up and stage Amy's play for the whole town with no hard feelings or ego at all. And I'm left thinking, man, you could have had any other setup for this. The first half doesn't ruin the episode in the long run, but it had the potential to be one of the season's best if it just had that endearing silliness from the beginning. It almost feels like the writer knew that making this cast hate each other for no reason is just an awful use of them, and halfway through completely changed tact. It reminds me more than a little of Art in his story, how his episode starts out looking plainly bad and then slowly reveals itself to be a huge missed opportunity. This show and Underground really do have more in common than they should.
I think we owe someone an apology.
Me?
And the most disappointing episode of Season 1 is its last. It takes a village to defeat a hedgehog. Shadow is introduced to the show for a grand season finale. He just stands around while Eggman argues with all the crap side villains. When he does actually get to do something, he proves himself a capable fighter and the one villain in the show that's not a joke. But he's also kind of just a boring asshole. But also there's barely enough of him to gauge much about him anyway. Eggman going full fanboy over him gets annoying fast, especially since him leaning on the fourth wall about Shadow's popularity makes his very appearance feel like a cheap, cynical ploy for ratings, coupled with Orbot and Cubot literally asking the audience to demand a second season of the show. If Rise of Lyric is any indication, then if Shadow was always in the plan, they didn't plan very much. I doubt he was, though. It's a nothing episode, but it's the most disappointing to me because it could have been a perfectly decent penultimate episode. Never mind that it's nowhere as bad as the actual penultimate. This has all the connective tissue of the setup to a proper Grand Slam season finale, where Shadow would really get to show his stuff. Hold this thought for the next season finale. Instead, it ends, and I come away asking out loud, that was it? You brought in Shadow for that?
Tails, so help me. If you've been confusing L brackets and T brackets this whole time...
Dishonorable mention too, it wasn't me, it was the one-armed hedgehog, the episode that introduces Metal Sonic for many similar reasons. It also wastes its potential by having Metal just be a weird, unseen, petty criminal until he actually appears at the end and gets to be a cool, menacing presence. But what a boring use of him until then, or lack thereof. The Shadow episode beats it to the list by having its wasted potential be a lot more visible. Finally, my 5 favorite episodes of Season 1. There are plenty of good jokes, fun moments, and endearing character interaction throughout the show, but these episodes came together into the most charming and entertaining from start to finish. I liked some of these for similar reasons to my honorable mentions, so I've included all of them in the list this time. Number 5, Beyond the Valley of the Cubots. Both Tails and Eggman discover that their tools have gone missing, and the Doctor sends Orbot and Cubot after the thieves, who turn out to be an entire clan of failed prototype Cubots. They were never programmed with the ability to learn from their mistakes, so our Cubot stays behind to look after them, with Sonic and Tails getting involved to find the missing tools and later to repair the Cubots when they keep breaking. Eggman attacks to destroy them for good, and sadly Cubot must abandon them. But at least Sonic and Tails protect them and help them find a new place where they will be safe. Hopefully.
Relatively safe.
We'll never be safe from ourselves.
There are 3 big reasons I like this episode so much. 1, for whatever reason, this is some of the nicest, bounciest animation and tightest lip syncing of the whole season. I can imagine the bots being relatively rigid rigs compared to the organic characters are a little easier to animate, so they were able to utilize more of the budget. The lighting is a little washed out in the workshop, not sure why that is, but at least Sonic and Tails have a nice snap and bounce in their animation that they usually don't. Considering most of it takes place in a desert valley, it's a nice episode just to look at. 2, it focuses on 2 of my favorite duos in the show, Sonic and Tails, and Orbot and Cubot. Tails is funny and adorable the whole way through, naturally, and while Sonic only does so much, he and Tails being buds is always endearing. The bots aren't friends so much as 2 very different people stuck in the same situation, so this episode makes interesting use of their dynamic. One of them thinks he's the perfect version of himself, while the other learns that he's actually the successful one, but they end up back in the same unappreciated position anyway. You come away understanding that no matter what happens, these 2 bots are in it together. And 3, this has one of the only fight scenes in Season 1 that feels like it has actual stakes. The prototype Cubots cannot take care of themselves. The entire episode sets up that they're a constant danger to themselves, so Eggman attacking them is a death sentence. Thus, unlike an attack on the village, with civilians who at minimum would know how to duck, it feels like Sonic and Tails actually have people they need to protect this time. Told you, Sonic Underground, a little bit of real stakes goes a long way.
When we get home, I have ice cream. I meant for you and me!
Honorable mention to the Meteor, where Sonic and Eggman switch bodies. Roger and Mike getting to really play around as voice actors and pretend to be each other is a lot of fun. And a nice change from shows also switching the voices because they don't trust kids to follow what's happening. And like how Valley of the Cubots was nicely animated, Eggman in Sonic's body is hilarious to watch. He's so scheming. You could tell everyone had fun with that episode.
When Eggman and Sonic touched this meteor, they switched brains!
How come nobody told me?
In order to swap back, they both need to touch the meteor again.
So distraught.
Number 4, My Fair Stixie. The show is easily at its best when it embraces silliness, and not many things are as silly as episodes centered around Styx. She uses a meteor protection system made of catapults and gets nominated for an award for her heroism, but she needs her friends' help to learn how to act around snobby rich people. She fails spectacularly, then Eggman joins in through the use of a
balance-stuffing robot,
and Styx saves the day at the end by embracing her wildness. This is only the 5th episode in the whole series, and it's the first to nail everything from snappy joke pacing to delivery to the sheer likability of the entire lead cast. Even the fucking Uncanny Valley ape gets in on a good joke.
In honor of saving our village, the mayor cordially invites you to the awardees. Huh. Conveniently, you may also bring your 4 closest pals. Sorry, comedy chimp.
It's also a great showcase for Styx's charisma and how well Nika Futterman plays her. The episode really wouldn't work if it was about anyone else.
So if we learned anything from this episode, get yourself a girl who discusses garbage, compliments you on your healthy hindquarters, and gets primal.
Sure.
You have healthy hindquarters.
Why, thank you.
Honorable mentions to Cowbot and Into the Wilderness, 2 other episodes that embrace silliness and end up with some of the biggest and most consistent laughs of the season. The latter in particular taps into my love for things catching fire and exploding as a punchline. Can you tell I come from YouTube poops? And Knuckles' stupidity is actually funny.
Ooh, marshmallows!
Did they just kill themselves?
Yes. And honorable mention to Chili Dog Day Afternoon, for all the same reasons as Into the Wilderness, but specifically for having the single funniest scene in the show.
Hey, little fella. Oh, gosh, you're cute.
Everything explodes in this show.
Look at you. Look at you. Hi, look at you. Hey, little fella. Well, look at you.
It's the reused voice lines.
Yeah.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 87 times, shame on me.
If Knuckles could actually carry a whole episode, it would have easily been number 1. Number 3, Tails' crush. Tails has a crush on a cute villager, Zoe the Fox, but he doesn't know how to talk to her. Each of his friends gives him different, incredibly unhelpful advice, until Eggman finally tells him to just be himself, attacks the village, and Tails gets to be himself, an adorable badass who saves the day and Zoe all on his own and successfully charms her. Tails is my favorite character in all of Sonic, and of course in Sonic Boom. This is an episode about why.
That is so adorable. You are so adorable.
Everything Tails does to try to woo Zoe is so adorably naive and charming, and in the climax, he gets to be the coolest character in the show, single-handedly stopping Eggman's attack to one of the only memorable pieces of background music in the show. The episode is so enjoyable that it makes up for Zoe just being a characterless prize for Tails to win, and the tedious side plot of Eggman arguing with the post office over a package. It doesn't make up for the casually transphobic ha man in a dress bullshit that we briefly get with Comedy Chimp. Dear Hollywood, stop doing this. Also, dear Sonic Boom, this character was literally only funny once when he didn't talk. Let him die.
Nah, it's cool. I'm just super swamped. Can't be tamed. Born to run.
Honorable mention to How to Succeed at Evil Without Really Trying for being another cute Tails-centric episode, though it loses out for wasting Dave, like I mentioned earlier.
Hey, words hurt.
Number 2, Next Top Villain. I told you. You let Dave really show his stuff and the results could be great. And Next Top Villain pulls off the difficult juggling act of allowing him the chance to show his competence and laughing at his incompetence. Starting with a daydream sequence of Dave defeating Team Sonic, a scene that goes hard and has one of my favorite jokes in the season.
Now, prepare to meet your doom!
Dave is spurred on by his unseen mother to get out of the house and make a proper villain of himself. Strict supervillain moms, we need more of those. Eggman unwittingly gives him the idea of stealing his technology, and Dave successfully kidnaps him to go do just that and prove himself by defeating Sonic. It doesn't go well for him since he has no idea how to control the octopus bot, but just giving Dave some time with the upper hand shows just how fun a villain he could have been. His mom is even proud of him in the end when he evilly destroys their house. As long as they're happy. Aw.
I am gonna draw Dave's mom. Just you wait. I'm gonna do it. I like this idea of this aged, like not grandma, like middle-aged woman supervillain. I'm so threatened. Frankly, it should be. No one should want to draw Dave's mom. And yet here I am.
The episode also has more funny scenes of Sonic and Eggman together, and one of the things Boom does best is play with their relationship and dynamic more than most Sonic properties. Really, not since SatAM and AOSTH had they felt like such personal foes to each other. It isn't a kind of generic sitcom, villain next door sense, but it makes for much funnier interactions than when Eggman operates on a big scale like in the games. Going back to Underground, Robotnik didn't work as a villain as well as in the previous 2 cartoons because as the world dictator, he's so big a presence in that world, but not really a personal villain for the triplets. Sleet and Dingo are. He has a big personality, but a comparatively nebulous place in the heroes' minds. I almost wonder if he would have worked better in a Dr. Claw kind of context, working entirely in an unseen capacity. But you put goofy Dr. Mike Pollocknick into the same village as Sonic and have them interact in both antagonistic and neighborly contexts on a daily basis, then yeah, makes complete sense and totally works.
I don't need to prove anything to you.
On that note, honorable mention to New Year's Retribution, where Sonic and Eggman get to interact and compete as just a pair in a funny and nicely lit and animated episode. If they made this the season finale, I would have been way more okay with it.
Nobody saw anything.
But oh!
Well, nobody but me. Happy New Year, Eggman.
Happy New Year, you blue son of a gun.
And my number one favorite episode of Season 1, Designated Heroes. After a swift defeat by Team Sonic, Eggman convinces them that it's not fair for 5 people to gang up on one guy. They begrudgingly agree to only fight him one at a time in shifts. This episode allows Eggman to really show his cunning as he's able to trick each of the team members and exploit their character flaws to win their battles, culminating in him using everything he's gathered from them to capture Sonic. It also allows each individual team member to be funny and endearing on their own. Of course I'm playing the Tails scene, I love it, who do you think I am? And it ends on one of the few really clever fight scenes this season as they keep to their agreement and progressively tag each other in, defeating Eggman only one at a time. It's the season's smartest episode, even as it indulges in some of its stupidest humor.
Why? This is just Roger's vocal warm-up.
Right? And last honorable mention to Hedgehog Day, another clever episode that takes a classic Groundhog Day homage and does a lot of funny and weird things with it. And it's another episode where Eggman takes focus and really gets to shine.
I don't want eggs and bacon!
Keeping the underground comparisons going, I feel totally comfortable giving at least the bottom 3 hard Fs, but at the same time, as much as I like my top 5, I don't know that I would give any episode above a B+. Similar issues of inconsistent animation, scripts, and plots that could have used more time in the oven. If there's one thing Boom has over Underground, it's that its average episode is much more watchable. Unfortunately, it's usually in a "that was fine" kind of way, just aiming for the middle of the road. The season on the whole is nowhere as striking and memorable as Sat AM was on average, but it's plenty enjoyable and worth a watch. I'll happily watch it before I rewatch Underground. A solid C. For all of my criticism, I still came away from the season completely understanding why people like the show and would have wanted a second season, let alone a third it never got. It can be painfully derivative and even mean-spirited in tedious and repelling ways, and its best moments aren't usually full episodes, but just that, moments. But there's too much to enjoy in there to say that it doesn't ultimately work. When used at their best, Team Sonic and Team Eggman, and especially their voice cast, are very endearing and entertaining. It's the most charismatic these characters were for years before and after the show began. And I think, going back to what I talked about in the intro, that's why Sonic Boom clicked with people in ways that the games were not clicking at the time. They hadn't been this charismatic and likable in a very long time. But to really drive that home, we need to broaden our horizons. This was just the first season of the show. There were in fact licensed tie-ins for this licensed cartoon. So before we continue to Season 2, we need to take a look at the games and the comic released alongside Season 1. And we need to start with Sonic Boom's most infamous entry, a game spoken of in the same breath as Sonic 2006 as one of the Hedgehog's very worst games. The disastrous final fate of Sonic Synergy. The following contains spoilers for Rise of Lyric, but it's not a spoiler to say that I get why this game alone caused everyone to write off Sonic Boom entirely. As I've mentioned, it was primarily developed by Big Red Button, headed by alumni from Naughty Dog. They also had some help from Ilphonic, the developers of the Friday the 13th game. What the fuck? It steps away from Sonic's signature speedy platformers in favor of an adventure game focused more on exploration and combat. You use the unique skills of your 4 primary characters to solve puzzles, find treasure, collect crystals to unlock new areas, and engage in repetitive combat for 8 hours. It's Jak and Daxter. It is the most Jak and Daxter-ass, non-Jak and Daxter game I've ever played, when it isn't suddenly Ratchet and Clank. The game was developed on CryEngine, famous for its graphical power, and you can kind of see that in the quality of the animation. Its cutscenes often feel better animated than the show. Then Sega boned over Big Red Button big time by signing an exclusivity deal with Nintendo, forcing the devs to shove that overpowered engine onto the underpowered Wii U. And then they rushed its release, and like Sonic 06, it was dropped into stores very unfinished. The result? A legacy as one of Sonic's worst games. As a reminder, Rise of Lyric is one of the inspirations for this whole series of Sonic videos I've been doing, along with Free Riders and Underground, because they're all pieces of Sonic media that everyone agrees is bad, but no one actually talks about. However, having now played through it from beginning to end, I hope I can provide some kind of fresh take on the game. Failing that, a thorough one. So for the sake of kindness, since I didn't do this for the show, let's start with things I like. In general, the gameplay works. Platforming, combat, exploration, the mechanics generally work how they're supposed to, and there is some fun to be had. Amy is especially fun to control due to her triple jump making platforming and exploration far more fluid. The animation and art direction is pretty nice, especially in the world design. The characters look a bit gormless in-game, and the shading tends to look unflattering, but the character movement carries a lot of personality. All things shared with the show, so yeah, they nailed it. Also, when you select Tails, he does this. That alone gets a point for me. The game is touted as a prequel to the show, so if you like the show, then when you do arrive on Bygone Island, it's kind of cool when you realize where you are. This here is the exact moment when I noticed, oh shit, that's Styx's burrow. And sure enough, just down the way.
Hi there. You give me shinies, I give you princess crowns, okay? Use secret vision to find where the shinies are buried, okay?
Alrighty. The high-speed roads are borderline waste of time. They just play themselves. But if you're quick to react, you can take alternate paths that lead to more collectibles. If you like finding stuff in general, there are chests, crowns, and mountains of rings all over the damn place. I even think it was smart of the game to keep rings separate from your currency. Collecting rings only fills up your health, and you instead buy upgrades or repair buildings by spending robot parts that you get from destroying enemies or opening chests. This way you don't have to worry about losing money just because you took a hit, which can be frustrating in other Sonic games. The soundtrack is also better than its reputation. Compared to the show, which has music that disappears from your brain when you sneeze, we have an actually exciting and heroic orchestrated soundtrack. The main theme is rousing, and the theme for Bygone Island is beautiful. It's just not distinct from any other average orchestrated music you'd get in a C-tier PS2 game. If they got Tomoyo Otani in there and made him rip off Koji Kondo as hard as he could, he'd still bring the heat. And you know what? The Tunnel Worm and Metal Sonic boss fights are actually pretty cool. Their mechanics are fucky, but they're still pretty cool. Anyway, this game is goddamn mindless. You can sleepwalk through the first half of the game, it's so easy. The puzzles are signposted so hard, it's like playing with a GPS.
This one may not be as easy.
Okay, everyone, don't screw this up.
I literally can't, Knuckles! All of the tedious and pointless combat encounters are identical. There's no point in finding collectibles and upgrading your characters, or doing side quests to get power glyphs, because after you get sick of fighting an hour in, you win every encounter by just lassoing the robots into pits. It's not until the Metal Sonic fight, over halfway through the game, that difficulty happens, and from there on you might start needing to try. Unfortunately, if you die in a long scripted encounter, like a boss or the undersea bolt escape, there are no checkpoints, you gotta restart it from the beginning. This sucks in any game, but it's also here. But what really drags down the experience is the writing and the characters. Nobody shuts up. You have 4 playable characters for the majority of the game, Team Sonic minus Styx, who I guess wasn't the main character yet, and at least 3 of them need to talk anytime something happens. Constant half-assed jokes, relentless directing of the player to solve any puzzle despite it already being drawn out for you, self-satisfied smarm at every little mechanic or accomplishment. There's just too much dialogue considering how charmless and brain-dead it is, and the game is programmed so that each line must complete before another starts, so you will often trigger a separate conversation in the middle of an argument or an extended player handholding session, and the characters will have to weave between the two. The pit level even does the Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts thing of mocking you for playing the game. I was tempted to quit right there because as insufferable as the game had been up to that point, this was the first time I felt insulted by it personally. But then the tunnel worm fight happens, and I was like, fine, you get a point back, I'll keep going. If you didn't like these versions of this cast at least a little after watching the show, then playing this game will be intolerable. In fairness, the voice acting is overall pretty good. For whatever reason, these actors always sounded the most organic within the Sonic Boom sphere, at least until Frontiers, especially Roger and Cindy, who were perfectly suited for these incarnations of the characters. They're just not given good material here. But you want to talk about shit characters? Let's talk about Lyric. Lyric is a green, clanking, smugging nothing. He's down there with Black Doom and the Deadly Six as one of the least interesting and least intimidating villains in the franchise. They gesture at a backstory with him. He apparently got sick from the crystals, so he has to use a mech suit to survive. And this made him decide to kill all organic life in the world and have robots take over. But it's an easily ignored afterthought in the story at best, and it's such a comically steep, slippery slope he fell down that it feels like a joke missing a punchline. He's mostly just another of this franchise's excuses to sideline Eggman, who's at least mildly entertaining in most games, and a fucking star in Sonic Boom, with a different villain who doesn't choose scenery so much as trip and bleed on it. What makes Lyric's character even sadder is that he kinda has Eggman's motivation, maybe not current Eggman, who just generally wants to take over the world and make a deadly theme park, but old school Eggman, the guy who used wild animals to power robots. Hell, Lyric's motivation is almost exactly that of Robotnik from Sat AM in the early Archie comics, replacing all organic life with machines. They made Eggman redundant by just making a second, worse him. Remember what I said about Sonic Boom being undercooked? Salmonella. Shadow's involvement and boss fight are also redundant in that he feels like an afterthought. And that afterthought was, I don't know this guy's deal, I think he's just shit Vegeta. Sega's weird guidelines on the franchise on the whole stripped him of all nuance and likability to begin with, and Rise of Lyric does no favors in getting me to like him or Kirk Thornton as his voice actor. But to be fair to Kirk, I don't think Colleen O'Shaughnessy could save this dialogue. The thing about Shadow as a character is that if you take away Maria and you don't put anything else back in, you have no character. Now, flipping him around so that he vehemently rejects friendships as a weakness could be a springboard for character development, and maybe even hint at a troubled past where he lost someone he loved. But it was never remotely fleshed out in the show, where he's just flatly evil, and his appearance here is far too brief to feel like anything other than character assassination. Combine all that with a clunky, tedious combat, and wasting a cool concept of you jumping through different points in time as you do damage, and you get just a plain bad boss fight. Yeah, I love the idea they decided Shadow should be Vegeta when they have nothing in common. Vegeta, they have almost like the opposite backstory. Vegeta's like a warrior prince who comes from a race of warriors, a whole planet of warriors, and he's all about power and being the strongest. And Shadow is a trauma victim whose entire motivation is based on love.
Yeah, you're right. I never realized how different they were.
Vegeta's personality is basically comes from violence and evil. Shadow's comes from grief.
CJ. Crying, sobbing, shitting my pants.
Yeah. And making Shadow into Vegeta just drains everything appealing about him away.
I mean, I do kind of like the idea of the aloofness of Shadow, like comparing that to Vegeta, like being aloof, but also being able to care like the way that Vegeta cares about Bulma and Trunks. Like maybe Shadow can be like, obviously he cares about Rouge and Omega, but like he has a difficult time vocalizing that, or being comfortable with vocalizing that for a reason or another. That's endearing. But just to go up, like, just to be like, oh no, they're not friends, that's boring. That's just boring.
Unless they use that as a springboard to actually tell a story with Shadow. But the restrictions on him made him so unappealing to write for the staff that they didn't want to. Ian Flynn said they tried to use Shadow as little as possible because they didn't like how restrictive Sega was with him. They couldn't
I like the honesty
write him how
there.
they wanted him. Yeah. There are other little issues with the game like graphical hiccups or how you can't leave a zip line once you're attached, which usually isn't a problem except in Bygone Island. Why is this even here? But really, those just boil down to the game being visibly unfinished. Rise of Lyric got a 1 GB patch after release, which is hefty for a Wii U game. It's about 1/8 of its whole file size, but it didn't seem to fix much beyond some frame rate and lighting issues, adding destination markers in what's already a heavily signposted game, and adding invisible walls to keep the player from jumping into the void. Doesn't mean you can't still, but it's less common now. But even without the patch, the critical lambasting the game got, calling it the worst game in the franchise since Sonic 06, doesn't fully identify the main problem. Sonic 06 is unfathomably broken and a shock to the system and its stupidity, but it's almost earned its place in history as a fascinating disaster. I can never get enough of learning about this game, its troubled development, seeing people break down its problems and exploit the holes in its code, or find new ways to make sure its legacy will never disappear. Rise of Lyric isn't fascinatingly bad. It's a yawn. It's boring and bland in the most insufferably self-impressed way. However, I feel one particular thing unites them as bad, unfinished games. Even if the developers had enough time to complete them, they still wouldn't have been great. Here's what I mean. As we've discussed, Rise of Lyric started development as Sonic Synergy, a game that I believe predated the entire Boom franchise idea. That actually raises several more questions, like, is that why this game feels so disconnected from the show? All that really exists of Synergy is its extended trailer, and while the reaction to it these days is one of disappointment at what could have been, my reaction is more that this looks mostly like what we got. The lighting engine is better, maybe, but it doesn't look like it would have been much better in its gameplay. Same emphasis on that boring combat, same arbitrary speed roads, same signposted character paths. At most, it would have had a few more co-op uses for the Enerbeam, and a potentially more interesting story involving Sonic's origins and ancient echidnas. Knuckles might have mattered again, think about that for a moment. We wouldn't have had to wait 8 years. Too bad it's this, Knuckles. The whole thing reminds me of Dinosaur Planet and Star Fox Adventures. The former is what the game was originally going to be, and the latter is what was eventually released after executive meddling and rushing to the finish line. Thus, the former has this legend now. It's become one of gaming's great missed opportunities. But judging by everything people have dug up about Dinosaur Planet, it wasn't going to be that much different from the final game. Take away the Star Fox paint and the tacked-on space shooter sections, and there aren't that many differences left. It was otherwise going to play the same, and was probably going to be just as average, assuming it didn't age even worse by being on the N64. Try replaying Jet Force Gemini and you'll see what I mean. That's Rise of Lyric to me. Like Sonic 06, it has some good music, moments of fun gameplay, and a very occasional laugh.
What do you want with the blue hedgehog?
Information classified.
Come on!
Peer pressure acknowledged. Acquiescing in 3.
But the highest either game really seemed to aim for is playable. It took an unrelated fan developer completely revamping 06's gameplay and mechanics to make it great, and that was not how Sonic Team was going to make it. I doubt anyone's gonna do that for this. 06 wins out in my mind by nature of being a spectacular disaster, whereas Lyric, like its namesake, isn't a spectacular anything. To paraphrase Todd in the Shadows again, it's not the presence of bad, it's the absence of good. And that statement doesn't really click until you've sat down with both of them, controller in your hand, and you experience that absence of good yourself. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric is a video game void. Yeah, Abby. It's what I've been saying about the show. I feel like it applies to the franchise on the whole. The cast is at their best when they're friends with each other, and you can tell they like each other and they kind of build each other up. Cases like a lot of Boom episodes, 90% of the random dialogue in Rise of Lyric, the story in Sonic Lost World, when the characters are shitty to each other, it drags everything down because I do not buy it from this cast. Also, it's just a desert of charm, but also more to the point, I don't believe that they would be shitty to each other.
Yeah, I don't know shit about Lost World story.
It sucks.
Oh, I bet.
Hi, Amy. What's up?
Fighting for my life with the fate of the world in the balance. You know, the usual.
Shattered Crystal, developed by Sanzaru Games, was released on the same day as Rise of Lyric to be its 3DS counterpart, which goes some way to explaining why they completely ignore each other. It's loosely the same plot, but a lot more watered down. This generic ancient villain Lyric appears and wants a crystal to make himself powerful, but this time around he kidnaps Amy, and in the prequel comic, which you can read in-game, mind controls Shadow. One of these events is consequential. It's now up to the remaining 4 heroes, including Styx this time, to find the pieces of the Shattered Crystal and save Amy from Lyric. No, sorry, excuse me. Just save Amy from Lyric. The crystal is optional and irrelevant to its own story. Cool. Like Rise of Lyric, the game has a strong emphasis on exploration, though this time in the form of a side-scrolling platformer. Every character is able to double jump, homing attack, and use the enter beam to swing around or slingshot between overworld maps, and each character has a unique skill that you use to explore. Sonic has an air dash that can break through blue blocks, Tails can hover, utilize updrafts, and even use a remote control submarine. Styx has her boomerang, which the player can control to hit enemies or switches and to gather items, and Knuckles can dig through the ground and also has the strongest aerial attack. You generally move a bit slowly, though you can dash by pressing Y, but honestly I don't mind. I think more Sonic games should give you more granular control over your speed. Oh look, Frontier's being good some more. The game focuses more on jumping, homing, and swinging around, and that's where the platforming is at its best, finding a line of bumpers, enemies, and swing targets, and just whipping through a level and using Sonic's dash to find shortcuts. You're also able to do additional jumps after using the enter beam, Sonic's air dash, Tails' wind currents, etc., so you get some freedom in how you move around the level. I dare say it can even be fun at times. Getting to the end of every level earns you a Sonic emblem, which are required to unlock later levels, while collecting a certain amount of rings and finishing the level within a certain amount of time earns you tokens to buy extras. Each standard platforming level has 2 additional goals: find all 5 shards of the crystal, and find all 6 pieces of Tails' blueprints, accomplishing each of which also earns you Sonic emblems. You bring the shards to Styx's burrow to have the crystal reassembled, while you bring groups of 6 blueprints to Tails' workshop to make yourself upgrades, including markers on the map for where to find more shards and blueprints. You're not required to get all these pieces in one go, and that's key to getting a leg up early in your run. If you're having trouble finding the blueprints, you can complete a few levels with only a few pieces each, go and get the first upgrade that marks them on your map, and then you can go back in the levels and collect the rest. You will be roadblocked some in the first third or so of the game, because you don't start with all 4 characters. You start with only Sonic, and unlock the rest progressively from there. But as you gather characters up to the last one, Knuckles, each level opens up a little bit more, and you can collect a few more pieces, get a couple more upgrades, and start clearing out levels for real. By the time you reach the Shadow Canyons, you should be able to gather everything except the ring and time tokens on your first go. The game is a kind of Metroidvania in that way. How it opens up and you gain more abilities to explore and find more collectibles is easily its biggest strength. And its biggest weakness. All of those character abilities I listed before are signposted almost as hard as in Rise of Lyric. There's only so much exploration when you're guided every step of the way. It's not until later levels that you need to actively search out side paths to find collectibles, so it's not as universally mindless as Lyric. The one exception is Sonic's air dash, which, like Amy's triple jump, you can sometimes use to reach places you're not supposed to, and that can be fun. It's not a Super Mario Odyssey level of playing with your environments. This is very much baby's first Metroidvania, but there is a similar thrill. The early game can be obnoxious. Your first major roadblock will likely be the Scrapyard, which needs 5 Sonic emblems to unlock. You'll probably only have 4 if you also did the first worm tunnel. This is the stage right before Knuckles joins the party, and almost every level requires all 4 characters before you can find every shard and blueprint, and thus their corresponding emblems. The one exception is Seaside Jungle. Remember this, you only need Tails and Styx to find every blueprint, which will then give you enough emblems to progress the story. It's a weird roadblock to have, especially so early in the game, and the mere fact that progression is locked behind what should be optional exploration is obnoxious. And that's the fatal flaw of Shattered Crystal, how non-committal it is. It's a quasi-Metroidvania, it encourages exploration, but with linear level progression, where when you exit a level, you have to restart it from the beginning with no shortcuts or warps. And these are lengthy stages if you try to collect everything, Sonic Heroes levels of drag. It's a game that can't decide if it wants to be Metroid or if it wants to be Kirby. And to pour salt in the wound, spoiler alert for the ending, Your only reward for reassembling the crystal is a purple token that gives you a statue of the characters, and the reward for collecting every emblem is a goofy dance party in Amy's house. I did it. To say nothing of the writing, yes, we're back here again. It's very much the kid-friendly, half-assed gags you'd expect from Sonic Boom's worst episodes, except this time it's co-written by Pontac and Graff. So now we get bland, badum-tish back and forth between the characters every level, but with these writers' signature flair for dragging jokes across the floor by their face until they choke on their teeth. Okay, to be fair, it's not as insufferable a script as, say, Sonic Colors. Part of the problem is how slow the text moves, which dampens any impact the jokes might have had. Slow dialogue pacing is an issue in most Sonic games from this era, but the writing still has the same flaws as Colors, and as Rise of Lyric. So dull and charmless, yet so impressed with itself, so convinced of its own hilarity. The most damnable thing is these jokes could be funny if someone just deleted their second halves. That said, even this game couldn't ruin Styx for me. She's the best part of the story. She learns her best friend Amy has been kidnapped by an evil snake, and she basically says, "Awesome! I'm gonna save her, kill him, and turn him into Boots because Amy loves Boots." Fucking bestie of the year. I don't know, if you skip the cutscenes, then the levels aren't hard to get around, and the gameplay loop is a lot more satisfying than Rise of Lyrics. If you're a connoisseur of mediocre Metroidvanias, I know you're out there, you weirdo, this isn't the worst one you could pick up. And actually, my favorite parts of the game are the two other level types, which do utilize speed in a genuinely fun way. Character races and worm tunnels. The races are as you'd expect, get to the end before the other character, but there are occasional shortcuts you can take to get more of a lead. Not that your opponent doesn't rubber band hard from either direction. The worm tunnels, meanwhile, are badass. They're obstacle courses in the vein of the tunnels and half-pipes from Sonic 2, Sonic Heroes, and Sonic Rush, but this time your only required objective is to dodge the obstacles and reach the end. There are no checkpoints, you fuck up, you start over. But the races and the tunnels are just the right length and give you just enough time to react to what's ahead of you, something many Sonic games struggle to balance. There also aren't any lives in this game, like most games shouldn't have anymore, so if you fail, you jump right back into what you were doing. I genuinely enjoy the tunnels especially, to the point that I actively tried to beat the time score and collect every ring. There are only as many rings in a tunnel as are required to get the token. And tokens are useless, the toys you get with them suck, collecting them all doesn't get you anything, don't bother, but it's an incentive to accomplish a goal by pure nature of being fun. I mean, I got every emblem. I earned that fucking dance party. I sure as hell didn't do that for Rise of Lyric. For the record, the only boss fight in the game is with Lyric at the end, and I do like that the game combines the fight with elements of the races, playing it like Sonic is chasing his friends while Lyric has them rolling away in a ball. But the fight itself is ass, super repetitive, not really a challenge. The devs tried to make it feel like a real showdown, but the story ends so abruptly, and, yet again, way too self-amused and impressed with its own laziness. Here, compliment sandwich. I'll throw a shout out to the music. It's quite good here too, combining the orchestration of Rise of Lyric with more use of synthesizers. I especially like the synths. They give the music, for lack of a better term, a video gamey feel, of the kind that Sonic music hadn't often had since the Genesis, at least not successfully. And since the voice acting is mostly limited to grunting instead of yakking, you can keep the volume up this time. So, despite getting a similar critical lambasting to Rise of Lyric, Shattered Crystal is okay. I border on liking it. It functions, there are good gameplay ideas in there. Its simpler approach to its story makes it feel more like an episode of the show, and the characters feel more like they do in the show than in Rise of Lyric, which might appeal to you if you're a fan. But as an overall game, it's a victim of wasted potential. It's like the weirdly decent knockoff version of itself. But Sonic Boom's tie-ins didn't stop at the games. The Archie Sonic comics were still active at this time, and they'd previously done a pretty fun Sonic X series. You might remember it for El Gran Gordo. So with their top brass taking the lead, including writer Ian Flynn and artist Evan Stanley, Sonic Boom got its own Archie comic.
Thank God there was a go-kart in the middle. I thought we just got a full frontal Sonic crotch.
Oh, man.
I know you've been waiting for a month, dear readers. Remember that episode of Sonic Underground? I do.
Unlike the Sonic X comic, which lasted a good 40 issues over 3 years, even after its own show was long over, the Boom comic only lasted 11 issues in just under 1 year. According to Ian Flynn, the comic wasn't canceled due to low sales. It was apparently doing just fine. And Archie editor Vincent Lavallo later clarified, because Archie thought Boom would be better used in places other than its own ongoing series. After reading the comic, I'm not sure I totally believe them, but Archie lost the Sonic license 2 years later, so you never saw them again anyway.
Sorry, I lost my spot. 1 sec.
Stick. Where are we? Point. I lost my spot.
Where am I?
Where the
Where
hell
am I?
the
Who are you?
fuck is this?
Let's start with the good things. First off, the art looks great. It's the usual Archie crew from the time. Evan Stanley as penciler, Rick Bryant as inker, Patrick Spaziante as the primary cover artist, and Matt Herms as colorist. Evan and Matt, of course, carried over to IDW, where they continue to do stellar work. The expressiveness of the characters, the pop of the art style, the comic is yet more evidence that any 3D animated cartoon would invariably look better in 2D, and the only exception is Jimmy Neutron. Even Comedy Chimp looks less Uncanny Valley. If only less. Much like the show, Styx is great in the comic. Almost everything she says and does is funny, even when they lean on her fourth wall breaking shtick. And when the comic suddenly becomes really bad, she's still funny. Not that it starts off on the best foot. The comic begins by introducing the core 6 characters during a battle with Eggman's Big Boy mech, which the comic centers around for the first 4 issues. There's a handful of fourth wall breaking, sometimes clever, like Styx noticing everyone introducing each other with logos. But Amy insults Knuckles' intelligence at the end of issue 1, making him mad and seemingly turning against them in issue 2.
Why are we all the way over here? We're missing all the action.
Sonic's bringing the action to us. Go stand opposite me and get ready to hit the Robo Golem.
You mean the rock cyborg?
Yes.
But it's not here to hit yet.
When it gets here, we're setting up an ambush. Just trust me on this. I know it's hard, but for Tails' sake, try to actually think for the next 5 minutes. Here it comes.
Oh my god, he's so pissed.
Yeah, that's a really detailed Knuckles.
He's so fucking bad.
Oh, he's either pissed or that's his fucking thinking face.
I actually can't.
I would buy that from Boom's Sonic, not Boom Amy. She is not that condescending to Knuckles, at least not in a way where she directly calls him stupid. She's supposed to be the emotionally intelligent one.
You 3 sit tight.
Yeah, because you're in tiny cages. You're in my tiny cages.
You're in my world now. Yes, that was the joke.
When I get out of here!
My legs are not moving. They should be moving. I need to move, 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 move.
At least they're ventilated.
Damn it, she's actually funny.
Yeah. She's funny in the show, too. Consistently.
It's like I keep consistently liking her. Okay.
But the comic picks up from there and peaks with issue 3, where Amy's hammer has gone missing, and everyone either goes out to search for it or helps her find a replacement. The art, the character humor, everything is on point this issue. This is the first time in the comic, at least, that I really buy that this is a close-knit group of friends.
Why? Yeah! Sonic! Why can't I find my hammer?
Amy, you're getting my logo all gross.
I was gonna say, it looks pretty snotty.
That's actually a funny line, though.
Sonic!
Oh, she's also wiping her nose on his ascot, I just noticed.
Oh, yeah.
That's unsanitary.
Can I just say this whole page is really cute?
It is.
Yeah, it's fun.
Though I feel like if you gave Amy the hammerhead shark, she'd be like, okay, I still miss my hammer, but I feel a little better now.
This will do for now.
This is kind of awesome.
Well, we searched the whole island. No sign of Amy's hammer anywhere.
Which stinks. I don't think my bandana can hold out much longer as Amy's snot rag.
Wash it! What are we gonna tell her? She was counting on us. Christ.
Unless something amazingly coincidental happens in the next 3 seconds, there's no way we're finding
her hammer!
Clutch.
My hammer?
I guess it's actually funny.
That's a great panel on its own. Issue 4 is less charming, concluding the Big Boy arc with a story about Styx exonerating a rock. But being a Styx issue, it still works.
But the Rock of Justice!
Styx, sweetie, your usual conspiratorial nonsense can be cute, but there's a time and a place for everything. This is neither.
I'm not being crazy. This rock is the Rock of Justice.
If you're not gonna help, just stand back so you won't get hurt.
But I am trying to help. This is my Joker moment.
Oh no.
I could have Knuckles plot.
I'll tell you what, Eggman. You get what you deserve.
Styx pulls out a revolver.
Why did you turn into a villain? It all started with a rock.
Way to go, Styx! You and the Rock of Justice really saved the day. I'm so sorry for doubting you.
And I have the Rock's autograph.
How does it work? Like, I don't know.
What's that? Hold on. It used up all its power defeating Dr. Eggman. It's finished!
Man.
Aw, dude.
If only we had listened to you earlier. Thank you, Rock of Justice, for everything.
What the fuck?
Sonic, put your clothes back on.
I'm naked. I'm free. I'm free.
This is for you, Rock.
While I mostly liked this first arc of the comics run, there's still the inescapable sense that even Ian Flynn didn't know what to do with Sonic Boom. He's usually pretty good at bringing out the best in the Sonic cast, but with Boom, everyone except Styx is poorly defined or outright clashing with who they are in the show. The stories are focused on the main characters just fighting and making very bedumtish jokes or played-out film references, while being completely divorced from the setting and tertiary cast of the village. Not that I'm complaining, the show needed to get away from the village more, but it is indicative of how little even skilled writers could get out of such an underdeveloped concept, and possibly how little Flynn may have been able to work with. That said, the second arc of the comic does actually go into the village, and maybe Flynn knew and was just sparing us. Like the show itself, the comic takes a while to find its footing and to figure out what approach to humor actually works, and that approach seems to be make Styx the star, which is not a wrong choice. And then the first arc with Big Boy is over, and the comic plummets from there. Both Flynn and showrunner Bill Freiberger write later issues, and they immediately have no jokes left except the laziest, most obvious winks at the audience. Issue number 5 almost works, peep that ensemble on Eggman, except by bringing in so many of the villagers, it also brings in their stink.
I have to say, I unconditionally trust whoever built this. I don't wanna. Let's just skip it. Thank you. That's about all it deserves.
And I would say issues 6 and 7, both halves of the racing arc, are down there with the worst of the show. But genuinely, Fire in a Crowded Workshop has better jokes than this.
Was that normal stupidity or malicious stupidity? Let's look under the hood, see if Dr. Eggman's hiding anything. Nope, everything looks to be in order here. I guess Eggman knew better than to try to sneak something past a genius like me. For the record, this isn't stupidity on my part, just carelessness.
What happened?
No.
He drove near a cliff, looked at the hood, and then drove off the cliff because he didn't see what was in front of him. Tails is a genius, and they needed to write him out of the story, and this is what they came up with.
Okay. This issue sucks.
But look who stuck around.
What? There's so much comedy, Jim!
Tails is a nothing presence for most of this run, except when he must be the butt monkey, and as his mom, I am very offended. He's a fantastic comedic and charismatic asset that never has a reason to be wasted like this. Styx is also a consistent absence in the latter half, and I believe the lack of these two play a big part in the comic's decline, at least until Styx stars in the crossover. We'll get to that in a second. I know she's a character that you don't want to overuse, but she's surprisingly hard to, actually being a great character to center stories around until season 2. And when you have nothing for the other 5 leads in your cast, you need someone to brighten this up.
Gotcha, egg breath.
Crash.
I take it back. I don't want to see you try. I don't. Growl. Badgy noises. Badger noises! Badger noises!
Save some for us!
You haven't landed us close. You couldn't have landed. Couldn't you have landed us closer?
Parking's at a premium, and I didn't have exact change. Wow, that line sucks. You did it, Sonic! You won the race on your own terms!
Thanks, buddy. This is a win for schools everywhere. But I can't take
Sure.
all the credit. I only won because I knew I could count on you guys. Winning the race and winning the fight are great, but the real prize is having you guys as my friends.
How corny. Oh, my apologies. I was merely commenting on my race day snack. It is
Fucking God.
He falls off the chair.
No, please, shit all over the sunshine of a franchise that is Sonic with all the cynicism of the world. He wears it so well. I should point out, only 8 of the 11 issues were actually for Boom itself. Issues 8 through 10 were dedicated to the ongoing Sega and Capcom crossover Worlds Unite. I won't go into that here because it had more to do with the mainline Archie Sonic and Archie Mega Man comics. But I will point out that if you like Styx, and I certainly do, she's the only main Boom character to really take part in the crossover, and 2 of its worst side characters as hangers-on, other home run riders, and she proves herself as a team leader and a hero in some glorious ways. And then the comic ends its run with number 11, essentially devolving into boring Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. That's honestly what I expected Boom to be before I sat down to really appreciate it, but it's certainly true of this comic, a phoned-in AOSTH. What a way to say goodbye. This feels emotionally dishonest, Sonic. Look, normally I'd totally introduce this funny book, but I'm right in the middle of doing my taxes. It's because you're being canceled. Let's not be let's not be coy here.
I need to file this whole comic as a tax write-off. It's bittersweet, to say the least.
The comic is not Sonic Boom's best showing. The art is fantastic from beginning to end, and when it's briefly good, it's on par with the better episodes of the show. Its latter half is on par with Rise of Lyric. Starting with Free Riders and Colors, the Sega was intentionally kind of pulling back on the overwrought stories and the drama and everything to focus Sonic up a bit more into something more family-friendly, a little more Saturday morning cartoon, because they needed to at the time, because 06 Shadow, even though Wii games like Black Knight at the time was not well received, even though these days if you find people who like Black Knight, they love Black Knight, but Sonic was selling poorly, reviewing so poorly, there was a serious devaluing of the franchise, and they needed to play it safe to kind of rebuild the franchise back up. The problem was, it went on for so long, and they really did it so poorly and lost sight of everything likable about the cast and the story and the games in general that they ended up devaluing the franchise even further. And then Forces was sort of like the breaking point where even trying to be dark, they had gone so far downhill in losing track of everything about this franchise and what people liked about it. It really looked like Frontiers was going to have to either be really good or be bad enough to end everything. It needed to be a breaking point, and I'm glad it ended up being a really good game.
Yeah, Forces is just so devoid of personality.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a fucking lame game on every level. And then, like, for a while, because of how bad Sonic 06 and Shadow were, and even like how nonsense the stories were in like Sonic and the Secret Rings, Unleashed, I was like, man, just make Sonic funny. Make him funny. That would be great. He's a blue hedgehog. Of course, serious stuff can work. That shouldn't be something that disqualifies him from being serious.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of potential for comedy in this cast. And then, like, Sonic Colors happened, which is not very funny. And then they just stopped trying, which, for better or worse, like, at least it's not painful. But then it's just became devoid of personality, even in games like Generations, which is generally well received. There's not a lot of personality to anything that's going on. There's not a lot of times for the characters to shine, even Sonic. Like, it's much more of like, this is supposed to be a good game, first and foremost, and everything else, whatever.
Is secondary, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very shallow. Here's the thing about Sonic. The darker, more adult stories can work because this is something I realized. He's not a cartoon hedgehog. He's a shonen anime hedgehog. That's the key.
Looking at it. Yeah. That's what he became after Adventure 2, at least.
Yeah.
Because he went Super Saiyan. Well, he's always been Super Saiyan, but he went Super Duper Saiyan in Adventure 2. And Frontiers totally changed my mind because its tone was perfect. Like, all of the characters were done in such good ways. I loved everybody. Everybody was the best version of themselves. And it was a pretty serious story, too. But it was also, like, really endearing. I would have liked a few more outwardly funny moments, but the charm, the charm that radiated from the Sonic and Knuckles moments was just, like, that just made up for anything that I could have possibly wanted.
The homoerotic tension of that entire island.
You gotta add the CH on it to the homoerotic.
Like, I didn't ship them until then. Now I do. So that's the state of the Sonic Boom franchise by the end of Season 1, a centerpiece TV show that took half its run to justify its existence, a short-lived comic that somehow did the opposite, a 3DS game that was supremely okay, and a Wii U game so famously shit it practically tanked the whole thing on its own. The two games sold a combined 620,000 copies in their first 6 months, making them some of Sonic's worst-selling games. Combined. Sonic 06 sold better than both of these together. So why are we here? Why is this a lukewarm appreciation and not just another befuddled archaeological dig? Where are the real highlights of this enterprise? Well, I'm not going to promise the show suddenly fixes all of its problems. Boom still has canyons aplenty to plummet into. But despite everything, it still has yet to reach its greatest heights. And the first sign of things starting to turn around came 1 month before Season 2.
Whew.
Fire and Ice was once again developed by Sanzaru Games, who went into it with the intent of making a better sequel to Shattered Crystal, to improve on that foundation and hopefully follow through on some of that potential. It was originally planned for 2015, only a year after the first two games, but it got delayed to 2016 so that they could polish it some more. All Sonic games need to do this, and while the result is still not an instant classic by any means, it is significantly better in both the details and the overall experience. Some improvements you'll notice immediately. Amy! She's actually playable and part of the story. I cannot stress enough how much I like Boom Amy and her friendship with Sonic. The entire wider franchise needs more of this. Gameplay-wise, they put the emphasis back on speed. Levels are much shorter now with a lot more springs and boost pads, and you will not spend upwards of 10 minutes on them, let alone 20. The character paths are still heavily signposted, but I feel they're spaced out better and draw just a little less attention to themselves. Except for Styx's spike wall switches, which still smack of I need to make you look like you matter. On the other hand, Tails' useless hand grenades from Shattered Crystal have been replaced with a laser cannon. I'm sorry, Amy, you will never be better than my son. The titular Fire and Ice comes into play as a passive element that your characters are always emitting. You switch between giving off fire or ice with the shoulder buttons, and they allow you to melt ice blocks or freeze water blocks to get around. Like with the signposted side paths, these are pretty arbitrary, but it does allow for some creative level design, and they really make you pay attention to those blocks in the challenge rooms, the races, and the tunnels. Collectibles are no longer required for progression and are entirely optional, but they also aren't placed too far out of the way, so unless you're going for the time attack, it's still fun to hop off the beaten path and see what you find. Like those obstacle course challenge rooms. Instead of blueprints, crystals, and tokens, the collectibles are hammer parts for Amy, junk for Styx, trading card pieces for Knuckles, and pieces of a material called Ragnium for either Tails or Sonic. All of these unlock little extras. The most worthwhile is spending the Ragnium in Sonic's house to buy concept art and blurbs from the show's creators. They even threw in some expensive teasers for a few episodes from Season 2. You can also give Tails the Ragnium to buy optional blueprint upgrades, none of which are quite as useful as the map markers from Shattered Crystal. But the least worthwhile extra is giving Tails Ragnium to make racing bots, which is an online multiplayer thing, and that's not happening. But the biggest compliment I can give, as it's the most relevant to this entire video,
video is to the writing. Despite being the same writers as Shattered Crystal, including Pontac and Graf, the story is so much more enjoyable. The agonizing duds of jokes are put aside in favor of character humor. The scenes play out naturally funny, perhaps because these characters had a whole season to become characters you could actually write jokes for. Though I couldn't help but notice the additional writing credits when I beat the game, not gonna make any assumptions about that. Styx is still hilarious, Tails is still adorable, and unlike the first two games, the entire quintet actually feel like friends. Little bits happen throughout the game that give it such a nice charm that the last two are missing, like Sonic and Knuckles visibly trading cards in Tails' workshop, or the down-low woogity-woogity that Sonic does with Amy and Styx. Just much-needed pieces of personality. I was already enjoying the game by the time I unlocked Knuckles, but I knew I liked the game when this happened.
Hey guys! Are we wrestling? I didn't bring my colorful mask and spandex tights, but I'm still in if we're wrestling!
God damn it, Knuckles, you pure-hearted bozo. The story is such, and please jump ahead to this time code if you don't want spoilers. Strange fissures have appeared around the team's home, spewing out energy, causing the weather to go haywire, and giving the team the titular fire and ice powers. Just out of nowhere, they get it, accept it, and move on.
I bet if I update the firmware, that'll push this fire and ice ability to all of our communicators. Awesome! We've all got the fire and ice ability now. Because science!
The game starts with just Sonic and Amy, who soon discover Defect, a little robot who's guarding the fissures, and who can create the game's bosses out of nearby objects. The rest of the game is them chasing Defect across the game map, meeting up with the other three along the way, including Styx, who decides Defect is her new pet, and intermittently having Sonic captured by Eggman to be humiliated by losing races that are extremely hard to lose. At the end, it's discovered that Eggman has been mining Ragnium and piping the byproducts through the fissures to the other islands. By closing the fissures, the pressure in the mine builds until it goes up, and we get one last fight with Defect. Eggman's let off easy, and Defect gets depowered, so Styx can hold him hostage for life.
Well, I would say those words. You know, those words I can't seem to say.
Thank you!
That's them. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go review my insurance policy and see if it covers active bot.
The story's stakes are certainly lower than the Lyric games, but those were under the assumption that Lyric was a villain that could carry anything other than syphilis. The greater emphasis on organic character humor, the use of fully animated cutscenes rather than a visual novel style, a few more pre-rendered cutscenes from the show's animators sprinkled throughout, and that simpler plot with an easy resolution all make Fire and Ice feel the most like you're playing an episode of the show. And a remarkably solid episode at that. I was charmed. As I mentioned, there are now proper boss fights at the end of each island, and they're pretty cool. Defect summons robot parts and junk to make a big monster bot related to that island. Two of your characters team up to take them on, and they tag in and out as you go through the fight. The health bar at the top delineates where the phases are, and each of these is also a checkpoint in case you die. Very appreciated. The bosses usually aren't hard. They're the same basic puzzle bosses Sonic's had for years, but they make fun use of your character skills and both of the 3DS screens. These bosses alone really point to the biggest flaw of Sonic Boom on the whole, and consequently, what Fire and Ice does right to make itself stand out. Creativity. Sonic Boom often finds itself as the very nadir of the wider Sonic franchise's creativity, a tired retread of decades of sitcoms and cartoons, banking only on a recognizable cast. The potential is there, you just gotta bungee jump for it. But not so much this time. There are some minor annoyances. Every time you enter the special rooms, the game has to remind you what they are, and the bottom screen never stays on the map when you switch areas. I like seeing my map game. I also feel like switching characters is a little clunkier this time around. It was a lot smoother having them map to the D-pad, but with 5 of them this time, I get why it was changed. Ragnium functions almost identically to rings in the adventure-era games, in that it's a currency that's hard to keep. If you die, all the Ragnium you've found in that level is gone. It is an infinite resource, and you'll probably get the most from completing time trials, but considering the Sonic House bonuses you buy with them are the only extras really worth a damn, they might as well have just made rings the currency. It's the same level of frustration when you lose them all. The hammer and junk pieces are ostensibly replacements for the blueprints and crystal shards from Shattered Crystal, but they're even less useful. You don't get any upgrades for the hammer parts, just skins for Amy's hammer to use in-game, and what you get for the junk parts is just another bot racer. It is a Styx bot racer, but it's still just a bot racer. Now, locking levels behind finding the blueprints and crystals was dumb, and taking that out was the right call. But the general idea of gaining new optional upgrades as you found collectibles was fun. It gave Shattered Crystal a satisfying sense of progression. I see no reason why they couldn't have kept that going with the hammer parts or the junk. Spending Ragnium on optional blueprints is more convenient, but it's also a lot less satisfying. Outside of that, there's some finicky platforming here and there. These damn Donkey Kong barrels that show up around the halfway point were not the best idea. They have way too soon a drop off. Okay, is Sonic Boom trying to be Donkey Kong Country?
I'd shower you with coconut cream pies.
But for all of my gripes, Fire and Ice succeeds in a very important way where its predecessors failed. It's the only one of the 3 Boom games that feels like Sonic. It doesn't feel like Donkey Kong or Jak and Daxter. It doesn't feel like a mediocre experiment or a UTI. It's fast, it's confident, it's having a good time just like I am. It can't escape its own jank like even the best Sonic games, but it succeeds at rising up above it. Also like the best Sonic games. As a sequel to Shattered Crystal, it's easily more fun to play, it's better streamlined, and it's actually charming. But now the ball is in the show's court. Sanzaru Games made a better sequel. Can the cartoon do the same? Sometimes.
Day 3. The cold is unbearable. For the first time in my life, I actually considered wearing pants. Desperate times indeed.
Season 2 saw the show moved from Cartoon Network's main channel to Boomerang, its graveyard, which is the long way of saying they gave up on it immediately. The show's viewership plummeted to almost a tenth of what it was on CN proper, though at least it survived for the full season. Assuming these missing ratings numbers don't imply that it didn't. The animation company We Do Productions was also bought out by Technicolor SA between seasons, and had changed their name to reflect this. I don't know if the acquisition affected their resources, but right away you can see a big improvement in the animation. No longer do the characters move stiffly between poses with sloppy lip syncing. Now their dialogue is lined up tightly with snappy, bouncy, weighty, and wonderfully cartoony movements, of the kind that you could only see in a few of Season 1's episodes. Even the cinematography and fight scenes tend to be more interesting to look at, though still take a shot. The only downside to the visuals is that the season was apparently rushed, and you can see that in how most episodes don't look like they'd finished rendering, especially the lighting or the occasional disappearance of characters' features. Some of the better episodes are also some of the ugliest. There is at least more interesting and exciting background music this time, especially when the fight scenes get good, and the fight scenes are also a lot better this season, though honestly, most of the score for either season is just cheap knockoffs of well-known, already overplayed tracks to begin with, to the point that it feels like a replacement for a real score or an actual joke in the script. Take another shot every time you hear predictable but worse yakety sax, or elevator music for 10 seconds of dead air they're pretending is a joke. Both will get very old the more you sit through them. The season brought some minor changes to the status quo. For one, there are a few more recurring characters in the supporting cast, including this cute but rote Zoomer parody rabbit, the absolutely adorable and sweet Beth the Shrew, the first and only villager who I'm always happy to see, we'll come back to her, and a number of new robot characters. Which brings us to the second change, more ongoing story elements. A handful of episodes wade into the ancient history of the island, though they don't exactly dive, and we also get a few multi-part story arcs, the 4-part Robots from the Sky, a pair of episodes focusing on the boys and the girls respectively during the same day, and the 2-part finale Eggman, the video game. They essentially confirm what I said back in Season 1. The show could have probably used full 22-minute episodes to flesh out some of its ideas, as all 3 of these stories are highlights of the season, one of them way higher than you'd expect. In general, it feels like the writers have gotten more ambitious. A lot of the weaker episodes, and especially the bad ones, feel like they could have been scripts that didn't make it to Season 1. But then you get to the episode about a mind-controlling ghost robot called the Dreamcaster, and that's the first time the show feels like it's taking a step forward. When it's not afraid to evolve, take a risk, or just get especially weird, that's when the season really flexes its muscles. Third change? Vehicles! That come out of nowhere and are clearly meant to sell toys. Good job timing that to when you had a tenth of your audience. They look fine, I guess. Some of them anyway. And they actually facilitate the characters doing things, so I'll take them. Every time they show up, though, it always feels like this.
Buy all our playsets and toys!
And the fourth change to the status quo, I assume came from the rush development. Watered down characters. Everything glowing I said about the 5 heroes in season 1 is usually less so. Amy, Styx, and Tails don't get as much focus and even lose some of their luster. Remember how I said I liked Amy because she wasn't a buzzkill? She is now! The already intolerable villagers somehow take even more focus from the heroes and have become even less funny or likable. Even Dave is almost divorced from his villainy, except when he's with these still boring lightning bolts. The one episode about them is only funny when it cuts to Sonic losing his shit over wanting a rematch with them that he never gets. For bowling. God, this show was a waste. Zoe is still just a figure in the background. There's only one episode where she's even acknowledged as Tails' girlfriend, and she doesn't say a word, and the rest of the time she's practically disappeared from the show. It's honestly just newcomer Beth, who I'm ever happy to see turn up. If it's anyone else, I instantly cringe and expect the worst, and only a few times was that instinct proven wrong. A lot of episodes barely even involve Sonic. Sometimes they even find ways to make good characters suck for an episode. We'll go into detail in the lists, but I will note that there's an especially rough stretch in the second quarter from around episodes 15 to 25 where the village has so much presence but Team Sonic or Eggman don't, that things turn especially dire. Our friend Radhames joined us to watch much of this season, and he was audibly struggling through this whole stretch. It even stuck out to us how, in episode 19, Robot Employees, the boring plot suddenly turned around when the focus shifted to Styx, Tails, and Dave. Likeable characters that are fun to watch. Never mind the 2 other episodes that focus on Styx and Tails together, a concept that should be an easy win, and instead they just flop because they actually focus on how the villagers suck. I need to make it clear now, Season 2 has some of the show's very best episodes, 2 to 3 at least, but it also easily has its worst. We're in a sad AM situation of having more highs, but many more, much deeper lows. We have the same marked improvements moving into the second seasons, including more lively animation and ongoing story elements that help to flesh out the shows, something Boom especially needed, badly. But also both shows lean even more into their worst habits and make them stink the hardest they ever have. The big difference, though? Sad AM didn't have any of the sneering, smug cynicism that really makes Sonic Boom reek. Even the Antoine shorts felt like they were made by people who at least thought he was funny. Boom so often feels like the writers think they're better than this and are just venting. It was applauded and appreciated at the time, but looking back on it now, the more mean-spirited and finger quotes clever the show tries to be, the less watchable it gets. It's times like this that I remember the period when the show was in production. The mid-2010s, Sonic as an overall franchise was in a pit of mediocrity, one that Sonic Mania only briefly made it look like it could escape, and then Forces shattered all hope. Those both came out while this show was reaching its end. Sonic fell into that pit after a string of critical disasters, with that pit culminating in the 2 absolute bombs that were meant to spearhead this very show. This was bleak. Liking Sonic was not cool. Dogging on him was easy to the point of cliche. I know, I was that person during this time. Double that with these writers being hired to work on a show with such an undercooked concept that you can't really do anything with, and has since ended up just another cliche sitcom, and yeah, what do you think they're going to bring to this table? That's what the worst of Sonic Boom feels like to me. A show made at a point where no one in the TV industry would have wanted to waste their time on it, especially the ones who were. All of that said, I want to emphasize again that there are some serious highlights this season, some of the best of the whole show. In hindsight, the good to great far outweighs the bad, but they're not the majority. That is just the plainly, boringly watchable episodes that aren't much else. To really dig into this, let's look at the worst, most disappointing, and best episodes of Season 2, starting with the worst. And this time, I'll be folding the honorable mentions into all 3 lists. Number 48, Victory. In a send-up of a classic sitcom plot, read stock, the village's rec center is about to be closed to benefit the mayor, who becomes more stock himself every time we see him. Eggman intends to buy the property, so Team Sonic challenge him to a soccer game to save it. In order to win, Eggman finds and mind controls the cyborg Team Sonic from the robots from the Sky Arc, and turns them into jerk jocks. Realizing that the cyborgs have the upper hand because they can predict what the heroes do, they have their brains, long story. Team Sonic ultimately wins win by being unpredictable, dancing their way to victory, providing the one ongoing minute of enjoyment in this tax write-off of an episode. Yes, it's a blandly unfunny retread of sitcom plots from decades past, as is Sonic Boom's wont, but Victory goes the extra step of bringing back characters I liked and making them suck. We'll talk more about Robots from the Sky in both of the next two lists, but one of its high points was the introduction of the cyborg copies of the heroes and watching those two teams cooperate. This episode goes out of its way to make them boringly unlikable and waste what made them cool. Add on to that the worst synced and mixed song parody in the opening, something that they nailed in an earlier episode this very season, and you've also annoyed me personally.
I believe in my feet. I believe in the way that I play. When I'm out there kicking balls, I feel so alive. Ooh, I believe in my feet.
Man,
How do you do everything wrong there? Okay, this is entirely gonna be me. But as someone who's written and recorded a few songs of my life, the pacing of every shot, every movement in the video was completely offbeat. The vocals were offbeat. They were way in front of everything. They were not mixed at all. That sucked. Anyway.
I love playing soccer at the rec center and keeping the beat, yo.
Except in the fucking song.
Number 49, 9 to 5 Knuckles. Yet another reminder that this Knuckles cannot carry an episode. He wins a lamp at an unfunny boomer comedy chimp filming, only to realize that he can't put it anywhere because he's actually homeless. T.W. Barker scams him into squalor, so he spends the rest of the episode trying to get a job to pay off his debt, getting even deeper into debt to Barker as it goes on, and running into more characters I can't stand until Amy scares Barker off with threats of violence. The episode even mocks you for watching it by teasing a more interesting Eggman battle off screen, which is ballsy for a show that couldn't do action well until now. This episode is the epitome of the absence of good. It is a greatest hits of unfunny side characters, starring the main character who's unfunny the most often, in an unfunny molasses spill of a plot that actively insults you for watching it. It's the most boringly bad of the season, stumbling in ways that the whole show insists on doing its entire run, but all in one package.
Night lamp.
I liked Amy's parts. Still an F.
Yeah, but it's a very different kind of F, because like it was just the most empty thing that I've seen in this show. It wasn't offensively unfunny. It was just a void of content.
Not aggressively unfunny, aggressively boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Felt like I was playing Star Fox Adventures. Yep, stuff is happening, but I don't care.
Yeah, but there's too much dialogue for us to riff over all of it, unlike Star Fox Adventure, so...
And the thing is, this whole video, I've advocated for the absence of good ultimately being worse for something's quality than the presence of bad. But trust me, the bottom 3 of this season found ways to break that trend. Dishonorable mention to Chain Letter, another slog of an episode drowning under off-target boomer humor that also actively insults your intelligence by pointing at the show's target audience and telling them to get off its lawn. Not even Sonic Underground was this embarrassingly dated and off the mark, but at least it got a huge laugh out of us.
Oh, good, he's okay.
A tiny part of me. Wouldn't it be great?
Yeah, hold the fucking phone.
Okay.
That was magic.
Holy shit. Oh my god.
Number 50, unnamed episode. You know what topic I would have never asked Sonic Boom to tackle because I would have no faith that it could pull it off? Everything in this episode. It's a satire of the voting process and herd mentality and public indifference to the loss of public programs like libraries, but also Styx's ancestor, Jebediah Badger, was the evil original owner of the village, and now everyone hates her and ostracizes her in what leans disgustingly close to a generational bigotry allegory, and this show is not smart enough to talk about any of this. It's a boring main plot about finding a name for the village that's gone without an actual name this whole show, even though the island itself himself has apparently gone through too. The episode is just an 11-minute beleaguered sigh. There is so much this show does well, but too often it instead chooses self-impressed schlock like this.
These writers have no business writing about the things they wrote about in this episode. Why was people being racist towards Styx the C plot? This
I refuse to acknowledge this as an episode, so I'm good for the next one.
I just want to say that this show has the worst masses of any cartoon I've ever seen. You know, like when how Springfield tends to have this hive mind, or Dimsdale or whatever, where all of the citizens are fucking morons, but that's funny sometimes. This show is the worst of that.
I don't like or find any of them, except for maybe 2, funny or likable ever.
Even as a whole, like as one singular entity, I hate how they behave. Even when no one specific one is showing off any of their unlikable qualities.
Number 51, Do Not Disturb. One of the worst things you can do in this show is shit all over the main team's friendship. It made Fire in a Crowded Workshop a steaming load, and it makes Do Not Disturb into a relentless, ugly chore to sit through. A gross slab of a creature chooses Sonic's shack to be her mating grounds. Thanks to Amy, that ass-fissuring beaver again, and their Endangered Species Coalition, Sonic is forced to let the hairy toad have the place, so he and Tails try to find a good mate for her so she will leave. This episode is blisteringly unfunny as it is. I can't believe fastidious fucking Beaver shows up more often this season, but the whole time, Sonic and Tails, one of my favorite duos in the show and in popular media, are angry at each other and constantly at each other's throats to no comedic or characterful end. It's such a nasty, charmless, joyless slog that it subtracts from the show's strengths, made even worse thanks to one of Boom's biggest weaknesses. It's terrible art direction. The bottom episode on this list is more actively harmful, but this one might be the least watchable. And the worst episode of Season 2, The Biggest Fan. Sonic runs into Mark the Tapir, a socially awkward nerd who claims to be his biggest fan. By appealing to Sonic's ego, Mark finds his way into being Sonic's assistant, and then the episode becomes a parody of Misery when he kidnaps Sonic and later the rest of the team. Everyone escapes, and Mark disappears from the show except for a handful of cameos afterward. This is one of Boom's most iconic episodes. A lot of people liked this one and applauded it for bravely taking a shot at Sonic's more obsessive fans. This is an episode demonizing neurodivergent people. If you take out the parody of Misery, that's kind of all it is. From the second Mark showed up to him publicly beating himself up for a minor mistake to the kidnappings, it felt like the show had become produced by the Nickelodeon child feet fetishist. I've been around the YouTube Sonic fandom since its early days, and there has always been a prominent neurodivergent fan base for Sonic. Some of them have made asses of themselves, but making an entire episode mocking and demonizing your franchise and show's own fans is never a good look to begin with. It makes you look petty and like you've got a superiority complex. Like, boy, aren't I glad I'm not this freak, right, kids? You're not this freak, are you? You're the right kind of trans person, aren't you? To do it to a particular segment of your fans who are already socially outcast and vulnerable is fucking disgusting. Back in 2012, this episode's writer, Doug Lieblich, also wrote for the first Night of Too Many Stars, a charity telethon supporting Next for Autism. Next has been criticized for supporting anti-autism hate group Autism Speaks and ableist behavioral therapy, though they insist the criticisms against them are unfair and untrue. I am not accusing Lieblich of anything untoward. In my limited research on the man, I've not found anything to suggest if he is neurodivergent himself or not, or has made any of his thoughts about it public. He's wisely removed himself from social media, so the only fair thing I can say is, whatever his intention was with this episode, it went beyond a cynical satire of Sonic's fans into something outright othering. Now, it has been pointed out to me multiple times that Mark might be a very specific reference to a very infamous Sonic fan. Lieblich and Freiberger have both denied it, insisting that Mark was only ever intended to be an obsessive fan type. But even if the accusation is true, that's not better. It's the exact same problems, but instead through the avenue of a fuck-up that way too many people have decided they need to be obsessed with. Is that ironic? I'm not sure, but it stinks. I'm gonna assume this is just generally shitty. Dishonorable mention to Ogman Out, one of 2 episodes this season written by Ian Flynn. The first one is good. This is the second. It's basically the same comedic conceit as The Biggest Fan, one shared with episodes like Counterproductive or Tommy Thunder Method Actor. Just 11 minutes of saying, gee kids, isn't this one guy really fucking annoying? Except Og is just a cliche parody of hippies. Yeah, go figure the reprehensible one made the list. Moving on to the 5 most disappointing episodes. I could give a mention to the whole season for being so disappointingly mediocre so often, but in hindsight, there's actually more good than bad, so we'll stick to specifics. These are once again in chronological order, but somehow the most disappointing episode to me aired the latest for this season too. First, Nutwork. Being only the 3rd episode of the season, Nutwork set 2 unfortunate precedents. It was the first to have a slam dunk premise dropped into its lap that it did not capitalize on, and it was the first to ruin everything by trying too hard to be clever and/or ill-advised lazy commentary. We saw some of how that went later. The slam dunk premise is simply Tails and Styx getting their own episode together. They're the 2 best, most consistently enjoyable characters on the show, at least sticking to only the heroes, so that's a blank check for great possibilities. But what we get is a commentary on conspiracy radio, greedy amoral television networks, and morality decay under capitalism that just trudges on towards a tedious inevitability. Honestly, I was ready to drop this one right into the worst list simply because the goddamn platypus came back. Yes, his shtick this episode is also infuriating. Not that I haven't learned to cringe instinctively whenever the puke green manager shows up too. But the season failed much harder and much grosser ways, only 2 episodes later in fact, so Nutwork ended up just a missed opportunity, albeit an achingly tiresome one. Dishonorable mention to Muckfoot, another Tails and Styx episode that similarly doesn't take advantage of the pair's possibilities, but at least it doesn't think it's smarter than it is. The show's running gag of Tails having trouble pulling off tarps is cute, and Eggman showing up out of nowhere in clown makeup is a stroke of genius.
Look, it's Tails!
Way to go, Tails.
I can't keep track of my opinion of you anymore.
Okay.
Also dishonorable mentions to Eggman's anti-gravity ray and If You Build It, They Will Race. 2 more episodes that ruin a decent premise by trying way too hard to be clever and end up insulting. The latter is a toy commercial in disguise that's just okay, except when it insists on being incredibly boomery. That's not what the show's title means, but they sure revel in it, don't they? And speaking of boomery, the former is the one where Knuckles mansplains feminism. To Amy, who is often watered down into a stock parody of feminists. I can't believe both times an episode seemed to really dislike women. It was written by one. Honestly, this episode was lucky there were so many bad ones, because it got perilously close to the worst list for that horse shit alone. If you were one of the people who applauded this back in the day, this and Mark the Tapier, just remember to wipe your ass. Second, give bees a chance. After a routine Eggman defeat, Amy finds one of his bee bots is still functional and, taking empathy on the bot, has Tails repair her. Naming her Bee, as in Beatrice, and taking care of her, the 2 form a sweet, unlikely bond. But Eggman recalls Bee and makes her fight with the Swarm, leading to Amy getting in the way of their fights in case one of them is her friend. But through clever use of some of the tricks Amy taught her, Bee is recovered, repainted, and their friendship lives on. This is so close to a really cute and heartwarming episode, but it needed another draft. Being written by Amy's voice actor, Cindy Robinson, you could tell more care was given to Amy than she usually gets this season. And it got one of the biggest laughs out of us.
Play dead!
Very Goddard.
But it also gets bogged down in a lot of meandering dialogue, one kind of smug reference to Knuckles' whole character being wiped for the show.
I'll watch it for you. People have been complaining that I don't guard enough rare stones.
And the fucking Gogaba chief shows up again. You could have just not, Cindy. I do like the 4th wall break with Roger.
Coming in for a hard landing, Tails. You got me covered?
Roger.
Who's Roger?
He's talking to me. Thanks, buddy.
And Knuckles gets in another good joke.
Maybe it's the mother in me, but I can't stand to see Amy so sad.
That's better. I'm worried about Amy.
That's the frustrating thing. This episode has everything it needs to be a season highlight, but the script just isn't tight enough for it to be as good as it should have been. Doubly disappointing is that, despite B bringing out a caring sweetness in Amy that's missing from the rest of the season, she never comes back. It's kind of a waste.
Here's a question. How would the Gogaba chief act if he was genuinely begging for his life? Would he wise up?
See, I don't know why people hate him so much. So to me, that's just funny out of context.
Dishonorable mention to Eggman's brother, another episode that introduces a new character, Steve/Morpho, who ends up way more fun than you'd expect.
He rescued me from an ice block.
And he actually is a recurring character, but it's another episode that needed a second draft, feeling like several different ideas got crammed together a la Sonic Underground. All of those ideas do come together and resolve by the end, but it's a bit of a mess in the meantime. Also, more Gogabas, it was never gonna work. Third, Robots from the Sky, Part 2. After the titular robots were stopped and sent home in the first part, all the remaining bots in the village get infected with mysterious malware that makes them attack everyone. Malware identical to a virus that Tails previously detected in the ship of the robots that just left. He and Sonic travel to their flying home, Morristown, to find the origin of the malware. After a lot of fighting and an impressive commandeering of an airship, they arrive, only to find Morristown in ruins. Despite what I said earlier, this 4-part arc actually starts really mediocre, but there is a lot of noticeable potential for it to get good. It steadily follows through more and more on that potential by ramping up the action and tension through its first half until it really pulls things together for parts 3 and 4. But that leaves part 2 in a bit of a lurch, because it has every reason to be as good as the arc's second half, being the first part to really get exciting and creative with the action. But what a tedious and blandly unfunny script it's stuck with. It's not really special to mention how unfunny this show can get anymore, and this is far from the worst we've had, but it does suck the energy out of a story that needs all of its energy to work. It drives home how most of the episodes on this list are disappointing for mundane reasons, unlike Season 1, which at least invited discussion in its failures. Even though the show got better on average, the longer it went on, the less that could be said for it.
Even though it's less funny and they have like a sort of story going on, it's also kind of bland and average. Like,
yeah.
Not bad. Like, I do like the interactions between Sonic and Tails, and even like small things like Sonic bowing after saving the old lady and him giving a wink to the ship before he breaks it. Like, it's small things. Cool. But like that's Sonic. That's exactly what it is. Like that does so much for characters. Just even small little nuances like that.
You know what this episode is? This episode is the dichotomy between what Sonic Boom could have been, with like an actually intriguing, potentially slightly bigger story, and what Sonic Boom actually is, dumb shit.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the last 5 seconds of that, or at least the last 10, saying the destruction of Morristown, go, oh wow. And then Knuckles goes, the nerve of these writers! That's this episode in my mind. The next 2 parts of this arc would find a much better balance between the action and the writing, almost like they were planned and written before this one was. Perhaps like Chaos Emerald Crisis was, this arc only needed to be a trilogy. Dishonorable mention to Blackout for similar reasons. It's the season's first big dip into adventure and the island's ancient past, with the team exploring a temple full of traps that it turns out only Knuckles is dumb and inattentive enough to get them through. And I hope that tells you enough about how dull and repetitive it is. Big first draft energy. Also, I learned to cringe whenever the mayor showed up thanks to this episode. They really make the recurring villagers fester this season. Fourth, Vector Detector. Amy's hammer goes missing, so she hires a private detective to find it for her. Who else but Vector the Crocodile turns up, in a snappy new outfit. Except he's here to make cash by starring in a reality show directed by that goddamn manager who looks like he's mossing over, so alarm bells were going off right away. Except, part 2, the manager and the show crew stay out of the way for the most part, and the episode primarily focuses on Sonic and Vector falling down the rabbit hole of an increasingly confusing mystery. In the end, Vector turns out to not be flanderized into just a money grubber, but a legit, earnest detective who's good at his job, and he finds and arrests the culprit. that gross, shitty manager who is trying to manufacture a mystery to make the show more successful. It ends up a solid episode, and Vector leaves a good impression, though Keith Silverstein does give him a very Jason Griffith-esque bouncing inflection in every sentence.
Now all we gotta do is see which one of these jokers eats their pie from the middle out.
And that's the thing. Doesn't a Vector cameo feel like it should be more special? This episode isn't great or bad or even all that disappointing like some others on this list. I mean, it's Vector. I like the guy, but he's not my first pick for a cameo. And that sort of wraps it all around to being incredibly disappointing. Vector could have been anyone else. He's not even here with Charmy and Espio, and while I like that Sonic is able to get along with him and cooperate, he's no replacement for the whole Chaotix' dynamic. Knuckles doesn't take part either. That'd be an easy way to work in a reference to Knuckles' Chaotix. This show loves unwanted witless references, but it's just another decent episode, and that's what makes it disappointing. All they did for Vector's special appearance was par the whole. And fifth, my biggest disappointment of Season 2, Return to Beyond the Valley of the Cubots. Call this one the victim of unfair expectations. I liked the first Valley of the Cubots a lot. It made it to my top 5 for the first season, and I enjoyed when the prototypes turned up again in later episodes. I also liked Fire and Ice on the 3DS, particularly Defect as an antagonist, and even the writing was good. So I had high hopes for this, a sequel to both of those at once, written by Pontac and Graff, who proved in that game that they could write good material. And this is a TV episode, much more their wheelhouse than the Sonic games, so this should have been an easy win for them. And it wasn't. It's not a bad episode. Defect is a charming presence, though he's way more endearing when he emotes through floating icons than when he gets yet another Wally Wingert voice. But it's such a blandly uninteresting episode until halfway through, when Defect becomes an antagonist again. Then it starts to pick up, but it's nowhere as good or interesting as its potential, especially considering Styx has no involvement. The character who liked and wanted to befriend Defect the most, to the point of basically kidnapping him at the end of the game, and the character Pontac and Graff had the most success writing jokes for, is nowhere to be found. It honestly makes me question how much of Fire and Ice was them, and how much was everyone else in those credits. There are definitely worse episodes in this list, but none had quite as much potential that they wasted like this one did. And finally, my favorite episodes of the season. And honestly, there were so many good ones that I'm going for it. I'm doubling the list. We are looking at my top 10 favorite episodes plus honorable mentions. For whatever reason, half of these came from the same 6-episode stretch early in the season that included The Biggest Fan. And if it weren't for that episode, I'd have less trepidation about doing this. I'm still not sure the season deserves it, but let's just pretend these episodes do. Number 10, Don't Make Me Angry. After all of Eggman's defeats, he realizes that if he's going to beat Team Sonic, he needs some physical superpowers of his own. Taking inspiration from a Hulk parody, he bathes himself in purple rays, and when nothing happens immediately, he gets angry. Except he doesn't turn into a Hulk, he turns into this.
What?
A rainbow monkey? From Kids Next Door?
Can we afford the rights to use it?
What's up, Drac? It sounds like you need this. What's up?
I mean, I didn't expect it.
To reverse the effects of the purple rays, he needs to avoid getting angry for 48 hours, which Team Sonic are all too happy to make difficult for him. The episode hits a lull here as Eggman attempts anger management and meditation, and it briefly turns into every other mediocre episode of the show. Og comes back, if that doesn't say everything, but its saving grace isn't far off. Beth the Shrew. Like I mentioned before, Beth is an impossibly sweet, kind, cheerful, and adorable child who was introduced this season. All of her previous appearances were major bright spots in otherwise mediocre episodes, and here she saves a good episode from spoiling. She feels bad about everyone teasing Eggman to make him transform, so she brings him a present.
Hey, mister. I felt bad that everyone was teasing you, so I made you cookies.
Well, isn't that the sweetest?
I ran out of baking soda, so I used toothpaste.
Oh, I love her so much.
Unfortunately, through her eager, childish curiosity, she nearly gets herself killed by dropping herself into the trash compactor. Only Purple Egg Cat can save her, and Eggman accepts this and transforms himself to get her out.
Don't worry, Eggman. I heard the whole thing. Let's book it. Come here, you.
If it weren't for that dragging second act, this would be so much higher on the list. The first appearance of Eggman's transformation was a shock to the system, the kind the show does not usually pull off. Beth is a ray of sunshine, of course, with one of my favorite jokes of the season. But the real triumph of this episode is how successful a parody of the Hulk it actually is. Usually the Hulk's just a senseless machine of rage and destruction, but when you get him to destroy the right thing, that's when he becomes a hero. That happens with Eggman here. His transformation is chaotic nonsense, but only he in that form could save Beth. Or Orbot, let's be real, he's a perfect shape for that trash chute, but I still think it comes together with a good payoff.
Oh, maybe this is why she's so good. She's voiced by Colleen O'Shaughnessy.
Oh yeah, they totally just killed the character. It was really fucked up.
Yeah,
it's
the one good villager. There she goes.
Yeah, it feels so appropriate that like the best villager in the show nearly got literally mutilated.
Honorable mention to In the Midnight Hour, the episode that Don't Make Me Angry narrowly beat to the list. Styx discovers a red spiral-eyed ghost haunting the TV station, but of course no one believes her because she is Styx. The ghost turns out to be the Dreamcaster, voiced in Roger Craig Smith's chocolatiest baritone, who hypnotizes the town with dreams of sugar plums and turns them into zombies for Eggman. This episode succeeds for one major reason. As the 8th episode of Season 2, it's the first that feels like it could not have been in Season 1. Dreamcaster is a very cool presence, bringing a sinister seductiveness to the show and its otherwise abysmal rogues gallery. It's a great use of Roger's deeper register. It's too bad it's his only appearance, and T.W. Barker has like 10. The good jokes are on the level of classic Simpsons in their use of misdirection, but too often the script shoots itself in the foot by congratulating itself for being clever instead of just being clever. Even the good episodes get crushed under the fourth wall this season. At least everything involving Dreamcaster rules. Number 9, Alone Again Unnaturally. Sonic wakes up in a world empty of any other people. We flash back and learn that during tests to make Sonic run even faster, Tails built him a speed amplifier. But the result is he went so fast that he's gone out of phase with the rest of the world. Unfortunately, Eggman finds out, due to Sonic trashing his lair, long story, and picks that time to attack. Tails has to use a second device to go out of phase as well to bring Sonic back so they can stop Eggman. It's a fun take on the invisible character trope, where in this case, that character also can't see anyone else. Sonic trashing the lair and Eggman thinking it's a ghost is hilarious, and also Sonic just gets to be himself in a great way, loving the speed.
I really think we should run more tests before we push it in.
Do it!
Being very expressive and dynamic in the fight, and hating being told that he's not going fast enough. Remember, he's not a cartoon hedgehog, he's a shonen anime hedgehog, and that's how you make him push himself. Shocking that the Sonic show does well when Sonic gets to be Sonic. Number 8, I can see Sonic's fear from here. After another routine defeat, Eggman realizes that he should try exploiting Sonic's biggest weakness, his fear of water. He sets up machinery in the ocean to flood the village, then taunts Team Sonic to come and stop him. Of course, Sonic is not thrilled about it since he still does not know how to swim, and hiring Soar the Eagle to help doesn't work out, but he gets thrown in the ocean anyway. Fighting underwater turns out to not be so easy due to the resistance, and despite some clever use of seaweed, Sonic gets trapped and the crab bots cut his oxygen. Styx jumps in to save him, losing her eye color and her nose for a shot, and Sonic steals a couple of Eggman's new shark bots to stop and destroy the wave machine. And of course, he in no way conquers his fear because that's not how you treat phobias. No surprise, this episode brings to mind the deepest fear from Sonic Underground, which has a similar conceit, and it turns out both work for the same reasons. Focusing on Sonic's aquaphobia gives them a solid focus and pace, there are some actual stakes and tension involved, and it's genuinely funny.
I never took those lessons at the community pool.
Sonic, you promised!
They wanted to put me in the beginner's class with the little kids. I can't be swimming around with a bunch of 5-year-olds. They can be so cruel when they sense weakness.
That's why on the first day, you have to beat up the biggest one in the yard.
Knuckles, that's prison.
Only if you let it be.
I suspected Eggman might try something like this one day.
Hard to believe that Underground has consistently better side characters than Boom. Soar the Eagle is a barnacle on Captain Squeege's ass, but it's also one of Soar's better, funnier appearances. There's a lot going for this episode. Imagine if they put Sonic through personal trials and it turned out more like this, and less like just a guy.
I think that there should be more focus on situations where, yeah, I conquered my fears. Now I'm never gonna do that again. Because that's valid. I think we've all been through something like that. Like, I ate a cheeseburger with donuts instead of buns. It was great, but I'll never do it again.
Was that a fear, though?
Right?
You don't know the deeper recesses of my mind.
To be honest, we don't, but knowing you.
Honorable mention to Nominatus Rising, another one of the better uses of characters I don't care for. Nominatus and his goons are digital villains who appeared for one episode in Season 1 and whom I didn't mention at all. They're so generic and uninteresting. They return here, successfully becoming physical thanks to Tails' Build-It box. Except he put a size throttle on its output, so they start the episode tiny. Them getting into Pikmin-sized hijinks and trying to survive wildlife is way funnier than you'd think, as is the writing overall, which is full of great bits. So I ended up enjoying this one a lot more than their first forgettable appearance.
Behold, my Caterpixels!
You'll never get away with this! Oh, Caterpixels! That's actually pretty clever.
Well, it could have been Caterkillers, dumb shit. What?
What? I like wearing comfortable clothes when I'm working.
No. No, we're not leaving that.
This is how I always do science.
I mean, it's his house.
No, but dude, he was totally, like, he had a itch. He had a itch.
Let him live. Just let him live, man.
What?
Number 7, anything you can do, I can do worser. After a routine Eggman defeat, where he tried to capture Sonic in a vacuum bot, Tails sarcastically asks him how he thought he could capture Sonic like that. Eggman throws the question back at Tails, since he's never tried to capture Sonic. This puts a bug into Tails' head to actually try and capture Sonic, and they set up a bet for him to do just that. Tails proceeds to set up a series of imaginative and increasingly Rube Goldbergian traps, though none of them succeed and trap all of their friends instead, until Tails exploits Sonic's biggest weakness, water, only for Eggman to jump in and claim victory for getting Tails to do the hard work. Tails returns to his still-trapped friends, they rally together to save Sonic, and Tails makes do with losing the bet.
You're the girl of my dreams. Please hold me tight.
I'm beginning to think that I lost that bet.
Actually, you did.
Don't tell Tails.
This episode was the first of the two, written by Ian Flynn, and it aired immediately after The Biggest Fan, which is a special kind of whiplash. This same stretch of episodes includes numbers 10, 9, 8, and 2 on this list, but this pair right here forms the clearest comparison between the writers who don't seem to like or respect this franchise and possibly even loathe being here, versus someone who loves these characters and tries to bring out the best in them. That has always been one of Flynn's biggest strengths. The episode works so well because Sonic and Tails get to play off each other in an unusually antagonistic way. One that's not depressing and mean-spirited like the later disaster Do Not Disturb, but instead comes from their friendship, unique skills, and competitiveness. Tails gets to be clever and creative, and Sonic gets to be a smug little shit. It's fun, not frustrating. There are definitely much funnier episodes. Too many of the jokes are fourth wall breaks that border on tedious. I had enough of that from you after the comic, Ian. And it's clear there's no real best he can bring out of the void of character that is this Knuckles. But there's an enthusiasm and liveliness to this episode that should not feel so unusual to Sonic Boom. Maybe if the franchise was in a better place, we would get more episodes from other writers that have this much fun with themselves. I don't know what happened to his second episode, though. On that note, honorable mention to Three Men and My Baby, written by Ian's comic colleague, Evan Stanley. It has much of that same tangible appreciation for the cast and plenty of good jokes, but she had to have a better idea than a generic babysitting episode. How the hell did Sonic Underground do that better? Number 6, You and I Become One. As Eggman packs to go on vacation, he programs his B-bots to attack Team Sonic on sight. The heroes take out and trap as many as they can, but as Tails works on his new matter transference machine, a straggler flies in, and in a parody of The Fly, they fuse together. Tails begins talking more like a robotic bee buzz, in a way that manages to be really cute and not annoying.
Is it that obvious? I was hoping no one would notice. Now let's see if we can reverse it. I'm gonna be stuck like this forever.
Nice work, Colleen. That could have gone very wrong. And while the team try to find a way to return him to normal, he finds that he actually likes being a bee, but things quickly start going wrong as he hears the voices of the hive calling to him, and he has nightmares about his friends turning on him. Giving into the corruption, he turns evil and takes over the B-bots, becoming their king. The team don't want to fight back, as every destroyed B-bot also hurts Tails, so Sonic finds Eggman and gets him to help catch Tails so they can return him to normal. There are good jokes in this episode. Sonic being a miserable sunflower is hilarious, but mostly the episode focuses less on comedy and more on just being cool, having a cool concept and doing cool things with it. It's kind of like In the Midnight Hour and a couple more episodes higher on this list. I think more of the show could have stood to take that approach, with how the results turn out way more entertaining than Knuckles smugly wastes an episode. I do wonder if this is just a parody of The Fly, or if the writer was also referencing that Colleen O'Shaughnessy actually voiced Charmy before she also became Tails. It doesn't sound anything like her Charmy voice, which is honestly just her Tails voice, but actually annoying, but it's a cute connection at least. Missed opportunity to not bring back Bee though, she really was a wasted idea. Honorable mention to Mech Suits Me, another episode that isn't so much funny as just really cool, as Sonic gets corrupted by an ancient mech suit and progressively turns evil. Plus the Predator parody in the opening is badass. It's also a great example of why Victory doesn't work despite having a similar idea. It's not enough to just make a hero into a generic jerk jock. You need to do something with it. Number 5, Layer on Lockdown. After a clunky opening making fun of ticket websites of all things, this fucking show trying to do commentary, I swear. Things instantly pick up as the cast accidentally make the layer go into lockdown, and everyone gets separated into unusual pairs. This gives characters who don't usually interact directly a chance to do so, and aside from Amy and Tails not getting a whole lot to do comedically, everyone plays off their scene partner really well. Orbot tries to help Styx escape, but she refuses to trust him. Cubot is being an unhelpful idiot while Sonic tries to unlock the base, and Knuckles gets to be really funny as he fails to recognize that Eggman's going through a crisis.
You know what I do when I start to feel down?
No. What?
I have no idea. I feel great all the time.
Neurotypicals.
The payoff of Styx complimenting Orbot and Knuckles saving Eggman's first robot are also surprisingly sweet and good cappers to their interactions. Cubot in general emphasizes how sad it is that he's usually not written very well, because Wally Wingert's delivery can be hilarious.
We can figure out Eggman's password. What haven't we tried? How about Eggman's favorite, I don't know, kind of music?
Easy! Dubstep Polka Core!
Fuck you.
Favorite color?
Clear.
How is that even enough? Maybe we're going about this the wrong way.
There's even a cool music transition as the characters use Morse code through the pipes to communicate, which leads into heavy drums over a montage. If only those first 30 seconds weren't everything bad about this show, because immediately after that horse shit, it focuses entirely on what's good about it. Number 4, Robots from the Sky, Part 4. Like I said, this arc just keeps getting better until it culminates in this. Previously in Part 3, we learned that the virus was actually Tails' Hypnobot from a supremely okay Season 1 episode. Tails immediately forgot about him after he exploded, and he turned evil and got yet another generic Travis Willingham voice. Sonic and Tails defeat him, and we begin Part 4 with Eggman finding, repairing, and forming an alliance with him. Together with all of Eggman's forces, they lead an invasion on Morristown, with the rest of the heroes following after. Hypnobot takes control of the populace once again, leaving Bolt as the only robot survivor. He comes up with a plan to create cyborg versions of Team Sonic who, thanks to having organic brains, will be immune to Hypnobot. What ensues is some of the coolest action in the show's whole run, with Team Sonic and their counterparts in Team Cybonic cooperating well in battle.
You know, you're really starting to grow on me. It's like we finish each other's paranoid diatribes and conspiracy theories. Sister!
It even reaches a surprisingly intense climax where everyone helps Tails reach and stop Hypnobot before an injured Sonic gets taken out. It's another episode that isn't hugely funny, but just allows itself to be cool.
It's not called Morristown anymore.
What do you call it now?
Behold, the city of Roboken.
I kind of like
pretty
that.
good name. That's not bad.
Whatever floats your boat. Did it change?
Speaking of Team Cybonic, now you know why I hated Victory. Honorable mention to Robots from the Sky Part 3, which has many of the good elements of Part 4, including good action and a surprisingly tense climax, plus the one scene in the entire show where the useless villagers make themselves useful, thanks to the one scene where Knuckles actually kind of proves himself a hero. It doesn't redeem the village in the slightest, mostly because it's the one scene where they're good, but hey, I'll take it. Good story arc. Wish we got more of them.
Maiton, Bolt, are we glad to see you?
No time for pleasantries. I ain't no frat boy and this ain't no ice cream social.
What kind of weak frat parties are you going to?
Number 3, Planes, Trains, and Dude-mobiles. This season's good episodes continue to try to redeem Season 1's bad, with the boys getting their band from that terrible boy band episode, Duditude, invited to play at a concert across the island. Lots of fun and funny road trip hijinks ensue, including ridiculous tourist traps, Knuckles picking up a serial killer while Sonic and Tails are asleep, and the boys getting arrested. And after all that, it turns out the concert isn't until next month. A lot of this feels tropey. You've probably seen all of it in other road trip episodes, but what it lacks in originality, it makes up for in execution. The sudden appearance of the Maniac is a highlight of the season. There are 2 songs that are actually pretty good, including a rap that only further embarrasses Sonic Underground, and it has one of the best one-liners of the whole season.
Now over here is the official letter from the Book of Records, asking me to stop contacting them.
Honorable mention to its sister episode, Styx and Amy's Excellent Staycation, for being really good as well, if not hitting anywhere as many highs. It's hard to beat the killer's first appearance. Also honorable mention to another solid episode, Mr. Eggman, about the Doctor having to re-earn his degree in evil, but primarily for the opening musical number, an impressive and funny homage to Telephone Hour from Bye Bye Birdie.
Hi, Amy. Hi, Dave's mom.
Number 2. Multi-Tails. Count on a Tails episode to make the top 3. He starts the episode by revealing his new force field device to shield the village, which seems to work flawlessly.
I call it the Village Fortifying Electromagnetic Protective Hemisphere. I mean, Domepocalypse?
Yeah! What is this? Some sort of village fortifying electromagnetic protective hemisphere?
No, it's Domepocalypse.
Oh, good name.
It's fucking next. Shut the fuck up.
But right as the mayor is awarding him for saving the village, Eggman is able to dig inside from underneath and attack. Tails realizes that he didn't consider every possible outcome when designing his new invention, being only one person. So he builds a machine to duplicate himself, thereby multiplying his intelligence. Except it turns out it divides his intelligence between the bodies, making him not smart. His friends trying to fix it just divide him into even more, even dumber duplicates. The adorable goofball idiot children run off and cause chaos for several minutes, and it takes them pestering Eggman before the situation is finally resolved. This episode reminds me of Cabin Fever from Season 1, because it starts out feeling like it'll be a much worse episode involving the mayor and all that. It really is that simple to ruin this show. But then suddenly the plot swerves into being great instead. The key is, of course, that it's all about Tails. It's incredibly cute and it's hilarious. Stupid humor is very hard to pull off well unless, ironically, you're clever with it. We see this all the time with Knuckles. If you don't try, it lands with a thud. Meanwhile, Tails helping Amy hang a picture by smashing a hole in the wall and throwing nails through it, or cackling like a maniac while trying to eat soup with a fork, is genius. This script is packed with great jokes, both dialogue and visual, and it does the right thing of never lingering on them too much, except to do a funny callback to close the episode out.
Why?
Even the beginning fight scene is cool, with Knuckles using the force field to push back Eggman. It's a good use of Knuckles overall, as he and Stupid Tails get to have fun together. The game of Duck Duck Goose is too cute. It really is just the scene with the mayor that makes me cringe because he does that to me instinctively. He's not actually in most of it, and the writing is so good that you stop noticing the lighting engine is busted. Aside from that, it's a great episode that made me cry laughing, and it's easily the funniest of the whole show. This and my number one were handily my favorite episodes of the entire series.
How is it doing better stupid comedy than Knuckles?
Right? And the number one best episode of season 2 and of Sonic Boom is also the finale, Eggman the Video Game Part 2. Part 1 is the long-awaited return of Shadow. Eggman wants to develop his own video game, so he tricks the growling idiot into fighting Team Sonic, using the worst edited sentence mixing ever, so he can use the footage as motion capture. It's a solid episode on its own, maybe not honorable mention level, but it's Shadow getting to show again how formidable an antagonist he could really be. But the payoff is Part 2, which begins with him having wrecked the rest of Team Sonic, and the two hedgehogs begin one of the few genuinely exciting and kinetic fight scenes in the show. Finally, Sonic convinces Shadow that he's been tricked by Eggman, so the Doctor escapes into an alternate universe from a previous episode and trades places with that Eggman.
Better hurry. Having two of us in the same dimension for too long will cause a catastrophic anomaly the likes of which mankind has never seen. Yeah, I'm going.
Sonic and Shadow track him down and get into the second good fight scene with the returning Metal Sonic, now equipped with all the fight data that Eggman recorded. Dragging him back to their world, the whole of Team Sonic have to join in to put a stop to Metal. But that's when Shadow decides that he's not happy just getting revenge on every next person that comes along. He hides both Eggmen in a secret location so that the whole world will collapse in a catastrophe. As chaos breaks out across the island, Tails rebuilds Metal Sonic to make use of his built-in Eggman tracker. The doctors are found, and the day is saved.
I'm not thrilled with the results, but I must admit I'm impressed with how you saved the universe. I'll be back, Sonic. But next time, on my terms.
Back in Season 1, Shadow's sole appearance was underwhelming, but pointed to the potential of him as the show's one legitimately dangerous villain. I even pointed out that the episode would have worked better as the penultimate of the season, and he could really show his stuff in a proper blowout finale. Season 2 also upped the ante on animation and fight scenes, and a number of episodes in this top 10 made it here purely by being cool. Here we have the culmination of all of these points. Building off the setup of Part 1, Shadow shows his real potential as a threat, with Kirk Thornton finally toning down the hissing into a voice that mostly works, and the show billed as an action comedy sates its desperate need for actual serious, exciting action. No shitty villagers, just a silent Vector cameo, no smug pointing at something in culture and acting like they're saying something about it, just a good time. For this one episode, Sonic Boom no longer feels like a frustrating licensing obligation, but a real cartoon on the level of a modern classic like its Cartoon Network contemporaries. How badly I wish the rest of the show felt as much like Sonic like it did right here. Its final moments before it limped pitifully in a cancellation. This is also a great example of why I didn't call out most of the episode writers like I did with Underground and Sat AM. I did call out Natalie Strout-Suzek before because she was the director for the whole show and wrote a good handful of episodes, including this, my favorite of Season 2. And also my least favorite of Season 1. Every writer was like this. No matter how good or bad one of their scripts was, the next one would be the opposite quality with a completely different narrative and comedic voice. There were no identifiable strengths or weaknesses like the Edens brothers' consistently solid pacing or Ben Hurst and Pat Ali's emphasis on world building. To really drive that home, I want to point out Reed Harrison, a TV writing veteran who wrote most of the episodes in my favorites list for Season 1, including honorable mentions. He had a really good track record. He also wrote the disappointing list entries Shay Amy, One-Armed Hedgehog, Cabin Fever, and Season 2's Vector Detector. And he wrote the worst list entries Late Night Wars and Role Models. Multiple episodes in all three categories. At least they were memorable, I guess. But the show is done, and Sonic Boom as an active franchise is done. It's so done that Takashi Iizuka moves back to California to oversee Sonic's development better so that something like Boom never happens again. But like Underground, we're now several years out from its end. We can look back and take stock on what about it was worth keeping and how good or bad it really was. So after all this, what's my take on Sonic Boom? Let's talk about that.
I better be going. Gotta make a pudding run anyway, because someone bogarted my whole supply.
When I finished watching Sonic Underground and making my deep dive video, I understood why it was so unloved and forgotten, but I was kind of glad I sat through it and I came to appreciate it. But even though it never got a real ending, its fare was canceled when it was. When I finished Season 1 of Sonic Boom, for all of its faults, I totally understood why people liked it and would have wanted a second season. When I finished that second season, I thought, its fare was canceled when it was. Let's step back to my previous statement. I said that the majority of Season 2 and the show on the whole was just the plainly, boringly watchable episodes that aren't much else. To outline that, I listed the worst, most disappointing, and best episodes of each season. Including honorable and dishonorable mentions, I talked about over 60 episodes, more than half of the show's run. But there's a key detail that I left out of those lists because I was saving it for this conclusion. If I didn't talk about an episode, I don't remember it. 30 to 40 episodes of this show just fell out of my brain. At most, I remember a line. Even some I did bring up, like Tommy Thunder Method Actor. I only remember a line, because it's the only part of it I liked.
Slam. I have to say that because I don't actually have a door.
As much as I enjoy the good parts of this show, and there are many, and as generally more watchable as it is than Underground, at least a letter grade better, I can't say with certainty that I'm glad I sat through it. Sonic Boom turned out to be so unspectacular in every medium, from the average show episode to the games to the comic. Its best moments are worth keeping. There's at least a third of the show that's totally worth watching, and several scattered moments that made me laugh really hard. 2 good issues of the comic, and I'll happily go to bat for Fire and Ice. But what do I expect a third season would be like? The longer the show went on, the less it felt like its creators wanted to be working on it. And it's like how with Underground, the only thing left it could have possibly provided to its audience was the reunion of the family. The only thing Boom could give me is an explanation for whatever this Shadow's deal is. Did he have a Maria? Was losing her why he's evil and denounces friendship? And do I really want this show to answer that?
Like, yeah, we don't know what his deal is. I imagine if there was a season 3, it would look at that a little more. I say I imagine because I'm sure it would have been just all the same boring shit, but...
I'm gonna guess Sonic Boom Maria with sports tape. And,
Right. Died in a jogging accident. But here's the most damning thing about Sonic Boom. You play a Sonic game because you want to play a Sonic game. They provide something that you can't get anywhere else, unless it's explicitly inspired by Sonic. Even when his games try so desperately to be something else, usually by reaching for the Mario market, they are still unquestionably Sonic games first. There is nothing in the whole of Sonic Boom, from its worst to its best moments, that you can't get somewhere else. What I said about Rise of Lyric honestly applies to Boom on the whole. It's not special in the way that Sonic 06 or Sonic Underground are. At least those are fascinatingly bad. At the time this video goes up, my deep dive into SatAM is still Patreon exclusive, but I will spoil here one of my major takeaways from the show. The malleability of Sonic the Hedgehog. As long as you give Sonic to inspired creators who love this franchise, and you give them the time and money they need to make something good, you'll end up with something really special. Sonic Boom does prove that this cast can work in a lighthearted sitcom. It's some of my very favorite Tails and Eggman moments in all of Sonic, and Styx absolutely deserves to be brought into the main franchise. It reminds me more than a little of the Looney Tunes show, another odd transplant of cartoon characters into a sitcom that worked way better than you'd expect because it was actually that funny. Consequently, it finished airing almost exactly a full year before Boom premiered. It's in the maybe pile, by the way. My understanding of Sonic Boom before I actually watched it was that people latched onto it because this cast hadn't been so charismatic and likable in a very long time. And I think that's proven to be true. But constantly as I watched the show, played the games, read the comic, I found myself asking, Okay, but why do you want Sonic to be this? So rote and uninspired a sitcom, so smothered under one of the worst supporting ensembles I've ever seen in a show, when there had to be more interesting characters they could draw from, or at minimum give the villagers more dimension and less stock cynicism. Why did you pick a kid's Sonic cartoon to be your vehicle to lampoon the fast food and television industries, bluntly vent your lingering disdain for Justin Bieber, or dig into your gross hangups on neurodivergent people? It borders on a cliched criticism, but it absolutely applies here. Who was this actually for? Because I'm not convinced they hit the target. At the very minimum, Sonic Boom deserves to exist. But like Sonic Underground before it, it also deserved to be way better than it actually was.
The show did remind me more than a few times of Sonic Underground. I do agree, like, Underground clearly had no good reason to exist, but plenty of times I saw things where I thought, if this had more time, this could have been good. Even in, like, the worst episodes, it was clearly just rushed so hard that they didn't have time to really work out a good script for it. And this show is kind of like that, where right up to this very last episode, we could see... Imagine if the show was more action-oriented like this, and we got badass moments of Shadow being cool throughout it, instead of all the fucking villagers that neither of us liked any of them until season 2, where we liked one of them.
Yeah.
It also really reminded me of Sad AM, actually, where the second season started like, the animation got a little better. They started introducing more ongoing story elements. And it also had more highs, but it also had way more lows that went way lower.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the more I think about it, the more I realize that the worst parts of season 2 were probably worse than season 1, even though, well, the thing about the worst parts of season 1 stay through the rest of the series.
Yeah,
is
that's
the
true.
thing. Like fucking the Gogoba Chief, or like all the villagers. They're introduced and you're like, wow, I hate you, and they don't get any better. I'm not sure that a lot of them get worse, but they don't get better. But they start at such a low point that their presence just grows more like ugh every time you see them.
I think Dave got worse because he had that, like, one of the best episodes of season 1 is him kind of getting to show what he could do as a villain. Season 2, he's not that ever.
You're right, never.
If anything, there's one episode which is really boring until halfway through, when it focuses on him and Styx being heroes, and then it starts turning around from there. That's it.
Yeah, Dave has just totally renounced villainhood in this.
I would say if there was a change one thing about, like, just one thing about the bedrock of this show, what, like, all the building blocks that it's made out of, change the villagers, actually make them likable. Like, because Beth the Shrew is so sweet and likable, and she's so funny every time she shows up.
If anything, the one page they should have taken from the other Sonic shows, maybe don't just drip all your stereotypical characters and bit characters. Don't just drip them in nothing but cynicism and just one note. Because it is just oozing with it to the point to where it wants to be Diet Office and like all these other things at the time, where you have to just accept that you have the Sonic the Hedgehog license and you're making a general audience shows, and half the time you have jokes that's trying to be social commentary, but it's toothless and it just comes off, yeah, we pointed that out. Anyway, back to the stupid episode where Knuckles has to eat a clam for 24 minutes.
And also, it's in a show where clearly the target audience doesn't, if they have any experience with it in the first place, they don't give a shit about it. It's so boomer as fuck. What kid from 1 to 18 gives a remote shit about homeowners associations? I still can't believe that was an episode in this show.
I'm hearing about it for the first time.
It's in season 1. It's so fucking boring. The village on the whole is so much the Achilles heel of the entire show. Because if you think about every bad episode, what's the focus? odds are it's one of the villagers. Or, at the worst, all of the villagers.
Oh, God. Like, just a guy?
Exactly. Yeah, and usually, like, them being unlikable and ungrateful and just one-note, unfunny bits, that ends up being the entire episode, and it makes such a drag.
And you really just... You get a pit in your... You hate them to the point where you get a pit in your stomach when they start talking.
When they appear on screen.
Yeah.
I didn't even hate the fucking old monkey. He had one good line in an episode this season, but as the season went on, every time he showed up, I would start getting that pit too, because he's not consistently likable.
In fact, the number one scene of his is him getting hit by a car and then getting hit by it a second time.
Oh my God. That was so fucking good, though.
Yeah, how many times has there been an okay episode and then they go to the Gogaba village?
Right.
And then immediately, I just know a letter grade has disappeared.
Like the bee episode. Like, they really didn't need to be
right.
in the bee
that
episode.
That episode sucks, except for him getting hit by the car.
I thought you were talking about the bee episode for a second. I was like, whoa.
No, the bee episode was
pretty
fine.
Good. Yeah.
No, the episode where the monkey gets hit by the car.
Yeah, right.
Twice.
I mentioned this when discussing the end of season 1, but honestly imagine if this show took the sense of community from Hey Arnold and put that in the village.
Well, that is a tall order because I love Hey Arnold a lot.
Well, yeah, that's just the idea.
Fucking show.
Obviously,
it's no way in fuck these guys were gonna pull that off.
I know. I'm not expecting the quality of the community in Hey Arnold, just the idea. Like, if, I don't know, in one of the episodes where two friends fight, one of them goes to the fucking, the pizza man. He's like a possum who has a mustache and makes pizza. It's like, hey, Tails, what are you doing? Is everything okay? Oh, I don't know. Sonic and me had a fight. Oh, no, I got some pizza advice for you.
Yeah, like, if not the quality of Hey Arnold, then, like, the idea of the heroes being among people they actually know. The heroes feel like strangers in the village, surrounded by people who don't like them and don't want them protecting them.
Yeah. Why? I don't know why everyone's such a dick to the people who just constantly save their lives.
Mikaela, you played both Sonic Boom games, right?
I've played all 3.
Oh, there's 3. Well, anyway.
Yeah. The third one is good, actually. Don't worry.
Shattered Crystal, right. That was the companion one to the Rise of Lyric.
Yeah.
Do the villagers in those games, do they act like shitheads, or are they just like normal NPCs?
They're not in the 3DS game. In Rise of Lyric, they're pretty much just occasional NPCs. Like, they don't really have personalities. Not that they do here necessarily, but like, Rise of Lyric is so disconnected from the actual show. Fucking the beaver is in it. He has a side quest. Yeah, Percy was in it. She had a side quest. The mayor is there. And he is just, more so than even in the show, he is just a generic vote for me, that's all I care about kind of mayor.
Great.
What was it?
The beaver was in the game?
The beaver,
Does he go actually all the time?
I don't remember. I didn't talk to him very long.
I avoided the beaver at all costs.
It honestly feels like comparing Rise of Lyric to the actual show, it genuinely feels like the showrunners and the developers only had a character sheet. They just had the designs of everyone. There were no personalities. There weren't even like cliff notes of who these people are, and they had to start a show from that. It felt like they only had designs. From top to bottom, the failure of this show is how undercooked it is.
That is the best word. Because there's so, like every single Sonic show to ever be made, except maybe Sat AM, there's unmet potential here.
Yeah.